flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I would just like to comment on the Christmas decorations being the town colors. Larry, there's a lot of feedback. All right, we're going to start today's work session with the WIIA grant. If you guys wanna come up for that, that'd be Mark, Bob, John.
It's good to see you with your Christmas tie on.
Oh, 30 days of Christmas.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
John, I'm just gonna have you introduce yourself for the camera. You can just talk, stay there, they see you.
John Collins with H2M.
Okay. So we, Dawn, do you wanna come up for this one?
I'm just gonna observe.
Okay.
Make sure I don't miss something.
So this is all part of, we received a $3 million grant for, one of the projects that we had listed when we were going through the upgrades to the water district. So, I'm gonna have you, Mark, do you wanna present a little bit about what, just present what, or somebody present what the project is exactly? And then there is a match for us to finance, so that's part of the reason that we're here today, is to discuss how this falls within the, projects that we had discussed, and, how the grant money comes in, and the money that we will need to, supplement with that grant to complete the project, so.
The project is for wellhead treatment for filtration of manganese at Plant 5, in particular, well 5-2. And it also includes some, the filters, the filter system, the waste system, building to house some of the electrical and filters and pumps, and a well, upgrade of the existing well, and then some miscellaneous improvements on the site.
So the total project cost projected out was 5.1,
6,
5.6?
no, 6.0.
It's total of 6 million, okay. So the grant was for 3 million, which is actually the max that you could receive for the grant, so, congratulations, I think that, it's a wonderful project, the grant was written very, very well. And it's very exciting to have received the maximum amount for this grant. And it's a grant, the way these grants work is that the max you can get is maxed out for 5 years. So we won't be able to apply for any more grants for this for 5 years, until 2023, is that?
Yep.
So we can apply again, I guess, in 2022,
If they have it.
for another project possibly. So that being said, I have Bill here also to discuss this, because this was in our project list. This was a project slated for 2022, I believe. And when we had discussed the list for the projects, that we would be bumping some up, especially if we got grant money. So this project would be bumped up actually to 2020, because there's preliminary work that has to be done. So there is work that we have slotted for 2019, which we will address after the January meeting. But we wanted to come here to discuss this for this meeting, because in order to, there is a timeline that we provided to the it's New York State, exactly, right?
Environmental Facilities Corp.
Right, so, yeah, so for the EFC, so, we provided a timeline for them, and in order to meet this timeline, to do the project in 2020, there is a certain outlay of money that has to occur to do it's not really the scoping, but it's the map and plan for the project itself, which is a couple $100,000 to do. And we'd like to have that done within the cost of this project. So, Bill, I will turn that over to you then to explain about going out to bonding for the other half of the money, to be able to do this project, and how we'd like to do that.
Okay, so there'll be a bond authorization resolution in the packet. Basically what that does is, the board approves the resolution, we go out and we have a 30-day and a 20-day permissive referendum and a estoppel period. The permissive referendum allows the public to say we want this project to go forward, and then the estoppel period lets the public tell the board, and we will allow it to be bonded. So that's a 50-day period with timing in between to post and notice and stuff like that. It's more like 60, 70 days. From that date, the town can officially start spending money on that project. Whether they bond that money right away or not depends on cash flow, and you have 10 years from the date from that date in order to actually bond the money, or a year from the date the project is complete. So we're gonna coordinate all of that with the project itself. You can always go out for something called a, bond anticipation note, if it's a long project and you need cash along the way. We typically don't need to do that. This project shouldn't be more than a year in progress, even a little more than a year. We wouldn't typically go out and do a tax anticipation note, but that is an option if we run out of cash.
And if we bond out for the 3 million and the project were to come in under the 6, you don't have to bond the full amount out, it's just what you spend on the project, going out once it's completed.
Correct. The authorization gives us the authority to bond as much as 3 million. When the project is all said and done, or if we're coming around to bond again in October, and we know we're within 2 months of being complete, and we have an estimate of what it is, and we only need to bond 2.2 million, we bond the 2.2, and then this way, we don't have to bond money that we're not spending. If the estimate was wrong and we needed 2.5, we go out and bond the other $300,000 when the project is complete.
And so this is where it kinda comes into the time frame. And John, if you wanna address this a little, so with those 2 time frame periods, that puts us into about March. And it takes for the map to come, the map and plan, and that would put us, I think we said around September. October, that we would be finished with that, and then there's a few other dates in there, so that's how we get to the 2020 date. But why we wanted to bring it forward now, because if we wait to bring it forward, we won't make that 2020 mark of doing the project.
So, question, is this, we do the work and then we get reimbursed, or can we ask for money along the way?
As far as the
paying
grant?
contractors that are working on the
From
project?
EFE.
The grant, I'm not sure if
EFC.
it's reimbursed as we go, I'm
Yeah, it's
It is,
reimbursed.
that's what I just wanna check. Okay,
I don't have the contract yet, I'm waiting for the contract, but that's what we understood it to be.
okay, good, cause sometimes you have to wait until the project's done, and then you can start billing for it, so I just wanted to make sure that we would have enough to pay the contractors along the way.
Alright, any questions from anybody, any
No.
thoughts, everybody okay with moving forward with this
Very
project?
happy, Dawn, thank you very much,
Yes.
we
Yes.
appreciate this.
It was a group of
This
Good
was
job,
good.
everyone.
dedicated, water quality action.
I think there's, congratulations all the way around.
It was a great project.
And
And you
it's
had
always good not
had
to
a lot of
have
time to put it together.
Riverhead taxpayers have to pay that $3 million for the projects that's necessary, so, very happy that we were selected.
Okay.
Alrighty,
Thank
thank
you.
you guys very much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Come back when you
Good
don't have
day.
so much time.
What's that?
Come back when you don't have so much time. You don't have so much time.
Bill, you're still here next, cause we're Total Tech next.
Oh, that's right.
So this is Total Technology, IT update.
Getting a little crazy, I've been following the email chains on that.
Okay, so Total Tech was here maybe a month or so ago and explained what their, recommendation was to upgrade our infrastructure, including our VMware. So, what they're recommending is for us to go cloud-based. They gave us all the details, we wanna go forward with that. It includes buying what's called thin clients, which is similar to the Zero clients we have now, but has a little bit of a hard drive in it. We're not gonna purchase any of those. They're setting up their, office now to, start testing it. It's what they call a proof of concept. So they're saying this package works for us to keep everything in the cloud. We won't have any latency. We'll have disaster recovery. They have the whole package set up. They're gonna test it first. They'll start probably with my department and make sure my department works, and then every other department that has a standalone piece of software works. Also make sure all the printers, all the scanners, all those drivers work in the cloud like they do on the server that we maintain here. Once they go through that, everyone's signed off, every department signed off and says, my software works, proof of concept is done, then we will go forward and start putting people in the cloud, taking them off our server, one department at a time.
And how long do you know how long that proof of concept takes about?
Well, we're not really sure because we have so many departments, and we're not going forward with any of this until VoIP is done. We're in the middle of VoIP, so Total Tech is gonna do that at the same time because it's not putting any more strain on our system. So we're gonna start rolling that out as we can.
But which one, so VoIP could be completely rolled out before we start doing proof of concept?
Yeah, it should be by February or so rolled out. I mean, maybe March at this point, we're right in the middle of that project. And, I don't know that by March, we'll be ready to now go forward with this project. We may still be in the proof of concept stage. And the reason why I say that is, it's even hard for Total Technology to tell us, because there's so many different pieces of software that have to work with it, whether it's RPS for the assessors, that hasn't, so all those have to be tested first. So it could be a 6-month project to do that, or 5 months before we actually purchase any equipment to do it ourselves. And then even from there, like I said, one department at a time. It's just not taking everybody off today and starting tomorrow. My department may come off for a week, and then you pick and choose whichever departments.
So once you come off, you'll stay off, they're not putting people back on?
No,
Okay.
no.
So, where's the redundancy?
What's that?
Redundancy.
That is the redundancy. It's gonna be in the cloud, and then there's gonna be backups. I wanna say in Colorado and Texas, I think is where we spoke last time.
I thought it
so-
was Reno.
What's that?
I thought the server that we're going to is in Reno.
I'd have to go back and check my
But,
notes.
so anyway, I
It's
just
in
wanted to make
Vegas, we were all
sure,
gonna take a trip out there
I
to
just
see
wanted to
it.
make sure that there was redundancy, number one, and number two, I'd like to see other prices for cloud-based servers, because I'm told that the price that they're telling us that we're gonna pay is high, so I'd like to compare, at least.
That's what Total Technology has done already, so we can have them show us, other
I'd like to
prices.
see
The company that they're dealing with, and it's,
Google and Microsoft, I'd like to see those.
he compared those, and he spoke
So
about
can you
that
share his
last time.
comparison sheet with us?
Those, obviously, those are the big names, they're a lot more expensive, or they're more expensive, but they're also, trying, like he had mentioned, trying to get in touch with, the head of Google or Amazon or whatever it may be. But I will ask him for information on how he chose this company and, who
I'd just like to
responded.
see some comparative prices, that's all.
How many you want, 3?
Yeah, well, however many they
Alright,
went
so,
to.
at least 3, but the ones they've done already.
Okay.
And you want one of them to be one of the bigger names, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I would like to see what they charge, because I think they serve a lot more people, and I think the price would
Alright.
actually be less, but we'll see.
So one of the top 3,
Okay.
Cloud-based servers in the US, as well as the other comparison.
And I'd like to see the proposals from those other cloud-based servers also.
Okay.
To make sure we have
So, but,
apples and apples.
but what I'm saying, so let's tell Bill exactly what we wanted, so we want to get them 3 comparisons, one with at least, a national cloud-based servers, and you would like to see the proposals for the apples to apples.
Yep, to compare, make sure
No
that we're
pun
comparing apples to apples.
You're right, okay.
Well, apples out of the mix because.
HP to HP.
Alright, so then, if he could get those and then just send that around send that around,
You got it.
or have at least prepared for the next meeting. So so there is no proof of concept until February, will not start till February, March, when the VoIP is completed?
No, they're gonna start that now. They're building something in their office, for us now. They're gonna loan us what's called a thin client, once they get something set up. They'll probably start out with just me, and I'll play around with it.
But proof of concept is to the cloud, correct? So if we're not sure which cloud server we're using, if we wanna still get those numbers,
I don't think, we can have them wait until I get the numbers, but I don't think who is hosting this in the cloud matters as much as the VMware software that we're using to get to the cloud. So the way.
I just wanna make sure that who's ever testing it, there's not a contract in place, that if somebody starts hosting it, that there's not a year-long contract in place
Well, I think they're
to
gonna
add
use
on.
whoever hosts their stuff, so it doesn't really matter. It's really a matter of. so-
Functionality.
Yeah, so we have a box right now, and instead of buying another $600,000 box, so we can host everything, and maybe outgrow it in 3 or 4 years versus 6 or 7 years, we're not gonna host it on our box, we're buying space in the cloud.
But that's what I'm saying,
But I'm saying, even halfway through that, if 2.5 years later, we wanna move it from one cloud to another, we can do that because,
But what we're asking for is the comparison of the rate to store, the cloud storage,
But
correct?
right now, they
So-
have we're using their cloud.
right,
Right, but they still contract with somebody else, and when they're adding additional space to the cloud,
Right,
they're still contracting with somebody else to
Right, but
store
during
somewhere,
the-
they're not retaining all of it.
But during the proof of concept stage,
the
they're just testing
proof of concept
it.
is not costing us anything.
Right,
I
so
get
we're
that.
using their
If they spend a
cloud
couple
for
of
now.
months and they increase their capacity to the cloud in order for us to test, okay, that's for them to say, hey, it's 3 months later and everybody works.
Yep.
And then at that point,
You
we
have to
can
make
then
a
decide,
decision.
the board says, no, we're not going with Neverfail, we're going with Google. Because of price or whatever it may be.
I just wanna make sure that to switch doesn't incur any more costs. If they test on one thing and they store on one thing temporarily, to switch stuff over to another
got
one, there's no further costs incurred.
Yep.
Or are we better off picking who we think we're gonna stick with in the first place?
There will be no cost, I can tell you that, and I'll confirm it with them, because we may not go with cloud if it doesn't work, or if
Right.
or if the software
Okay,
for VMware in the cloud doesn't work, so how can we have a cost for that anyway? But I will
Just
confirm
confirm,
that.
that's it, yeah, okay, good.
You wanna spend a dime when you don't have to.
It's like test driving a car.
Alright, any other questions about, where we are with this? Anybody? No? Okay.
They have less value, I'm already up to 100,000 miles, I'm up to
All right.
100,000 miles, you lose all the value.
Next, we will move on to, proposed code amendments to DC one downtown.
I started with 10. But I own it, and they can give me.
What are you looking at?
I'm looking at an Audi Q5 used.
Is that your stomach?
Oh, down to 2 pages, I like it.
What? No, Catherine's stomach is like,
Growling?
yes.
Like that? It helps the author, during his presentation. So I wanna talk about today our pedestrian movements in the downtown, because it's something that we've talked about it kind of off as a subtext to everything we're also talking about in terms of design. And it has to do with pedestrian movement and circulation throughout the downtown. So I did an analysis of what we have today in terms of pedestrian movement throughout the downtown, and we've got 4 different types of means of getting from point A to point B. One is an alley, one is a path, one is a walkway, and the 4th is a driveway. And I know that this is a little primitive, but an alley is defined as a narrow passageway between buildings. A path is a trodden way through the woods, or more specifically in our case, a track specifically constructed for a particular use, and that's really a critical part to what I'm gonna be talking about. And then a walkway is a path or path walking along, especially a raised passageway, and this is what Jody was talking about, connecting different sections of a building or a wide path in a parking garden. And in order for any of these elements to be successful, it has to be clear to the user, the person walking downtown, as to what they're for and where they're gonna take you to. And that's one of our fundamental failures of what we have downtown. They can't just be a road to nowhere. If you remember 1985 Talking Heads song, we're on a road to nowhere.
We were too young.
David Burney.
And here we have the Peconic River, and it's a destination. The downtown's a destination, the Peconic River's a destination. We have alleys connecting them, but nobody knows that they're really there because they're not advertised as such. And they're not inviting. So, just some suggested improvements that I wanna include in the DC one guidelines is that there should be some signage on Main Street needed to direct people to where to go. There needs to be better lighting so people feel safe going through them. Didn't mean to make the journey more interesting, cause you go through there right now, it's not a hospital environment, there's no purpose to go there other than to get through it, to get to the other side.
Just a couple things, for the signage, we have, a grant for wayfaring signs, and they're in the process of being done.
Great.
Lighting, we also have, I'm gonna say almost, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we have a lot more lights that will be going up there also, so.
Perfect.
Both of those have been,
Are underway.
we have money to be able to do them, and they're in the process of being done.
And then the last,
Sorry to interrupt,
Sure.
but is any of the lighting going in that alleyway that's down on,
you'll see pictures in here that you
near
can,
the sneaker place?
yep,
or
you'll see the picture in here. I'm
yogurt?
I can't
Okay.
get,
gonna go through the pictures in
I
a
can,
moment.
from engineering, next time I can
Okay.
have them come and show everything.
And here's one of the biggest one, is we need a walkway going from the back of the buildings, and calling it back of the buildings, down to the river, because it's a really inhospitable environment. If you wanna go down to the river, you're walking through a parking lot. It's not a great environment that you wanna be in, there's no designated walkway to go from the back of the buildings down to the river.
There's walkways, they're just not designated.
So, we just need to make it a little more, to me, the Peconic River is a place of opportunities, we need a roadmap to get there, and through the DC one guideline, we can, have a roadmap, so to speak, for future developers. So I did analysis of the, existing alleyways, we have 10, in the downtown, 5 are on the north side of Main Street, and 5 are on the south side. And we have some really good ones and some that aren't so great. I think one of the more successful one is right at the corner of Peconic and East Main Street. This is 30 Main Street. And you have a 10-foot wide alley with a 4-foot planted bed. And what's unique about this one is you actually have doors on the side of the building. They're not being utilized, but you have opportunity for having storefronts facing onto the alley.
Those are office spaces going
Yep.
in there, and there's a physical therapist over
Yep.
there, they are used.
And it's well lit, I go down there
Yep.
every Friday night.
So it's an inviting environment, so I think this is one more successful, and you can see the sign for the physical therapy. And you have a nice light fixture there, so people feel safe that they're going through there, so I think that, it's a really good example of what can be done.
And I also, one of the other things to point out about this walkway, it's not quite as enclosed as the others, because, the 30 East Main does
Right.
have a little bit of that public space in
Yep.
the beginning, while the building still comes out the same height, out to the same, footprint as the rest of them, there is that little bit of that open area there.
And there's a bench. Something very simple,
Yeah, but, Georgia Malone did that all on her own.
Yep.
She said, when my tenants come to the building, I want them to feel safe
Feel
in this
comfortable and
alleyway.
right.
So,
Part of the
I
design.
like what you did, but one of the problems that in the alleyways with the lighting is, that we've found in the past in working with engineering, is that, the light fixtures are attached to a building that is owned by a private person, and in some cases, there's no electricity in those buildings, so that's part of the problem with the lighting in the alleyways, is that the fixture is attached to a building that somebody owns, and that there's no electricity because the building's vacant. So, I don't know how to address that, other than with, separate lamp posts that the town owns, and we pay the utility bill, rather than the property owner paying the utility bill for the lighting in the alleyways, but it's something that needs to be looked at.
I wonder if we could do some kind of string lighting, like that one alleyway, and then have it somehow go to a town.
Well, all of the
Yeah, I don't think
alleyways are
that's
there, some of those, we did do the walkthrough there, some of those are maintained by the town, within the alleyways, even the ones attached to the buildings. So there is some confusion over that needs to be cleared up, but it's a mixed bag of who maintains the light there, even some of it attached to the buildings.
And getting permission from the property owners in order to have our lighting on their buildings.
That's what okay, yeah.
Alright, on the second page, there,
Texas, yeah, anybody that wouldn't want lights in their building, let me talk to them, cause it's absolutely, I don't
Well,
need.
it's gotta be connected to a
Oh, I don't want my
transformer.
building lit, I want it nice and dark down here.
It's
Yeah,
gotta
no.
be,
No,
it's
I
gotta
think
be
you're
connected to
right.
a transformer, and it's the vacant buildings that I'm talking about.
Right, they're the last ones to talk.
and on page 2, we have the alley, by the Summer Winds. I use it all the time.
Which one?
Page 2,
Oh, Oh, you use
Between
page
the
2 all the
Vale
time?
Levitt
I asked you where,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Summerwind and,
Yeah.
Are you
and-
talking about
and-
this one up here?
Yeah, Vale Levitt, yep. And I use it all the time,
The one in between the two buildings?
yeah. And it's only 5 feet wide, and if it had some signage, that'd be a really big help for people who are not familiar with the area. I know the area, it just needs something to let people know what's on the other side.
Well,
But that was part of the site plan, and that was voluntary to create that 5 foot.
but
Right.
that's a public space there?
I believe it's owned by the property owner, it's not owned by the town, but it was something that was included in the site plan.
Because I
It
know,
provides a public use,
But is
even
it
though it's privately owned, it's public.
Yes,
but my question is towards the end of that,
Yeah.
right? Because that's where you guys have the garbage over there, right?
Yep.
So, but it's clear all the way through?
oh yeah, you can walk down there.
Yep, I go there to go to Chase Bank, or when I'm doing my numerous site inspections at Conifer, I park in the parking lot and walk through there.
Geez, when Vale has an event going on, it's tremendously used and it has.
Yeah, so it's needed, even if it's only 5 foot wide,
Yeah,
it's
but
needed.
it does need, I honestly didn't know it was there.
I didn't know it was
So,
public.
yeah, it needs to be marked, you're right.
The next one is the one that's, you were talking about, with the, next to the former sneaker aquarium.
Right.
Here you got really bad lighting, overgrown landscaping, you got this electrical cable, I don't know how that's even legal.
That's the Hubbard Appliance store there.
But again,
Generations ago.
and there's no identification from either side of the alley as to what's on the other side, like this way to Main Street or something like that, so it's just an example, and and this one's 9 foot wide.
And that used to be beautiful, they redid that back about 30 years ago.
Yeah, there were, looks like there used to be planters
Oh, yeah, they
hanging
did
on
a
the side of the
beautiful job.
building.
Yep.
So it needs some help. The next one is an unusual one, I forgot there was even there. This is at the, it's an International Financial Group
Oh,
building.
that little drive-through?
Yeah,
Oh,
and
right.
it used to be it looked like it was a drive-through at some point,
It was.
It was.
and
And when McKay had that Vine and Hopsy parked his car right there, so.
so it does provide an opportunity for pedestrians or somebody
Is
to
it
go.
public or private?
It's private, but it could be public.
I think there's a sign there that says private on it.
I walk through all the time.
But for driving through, I believe
Oh,
there's
no,
a sign on there
yeah.
that
No,
says
you can't
private
drive
driveway.
You can't, right, I would not drive through it, I would walk through it.
it's, the one between Summerwind and Vale is private also, but
Right,
it's,
but publicly used.
yes,
But that's part of the, but if it's private but open to the public, then it's still, you could maintain by but public space. That's normally what you tend to do with some of the, what you do with the pop stuff, is it becomes privately owned but public space, publicly shared space. And usually there's a sign
Or
saying that.
publicly used space.
well, I think that has to be, that's why we're discussing it in the zone changing for DC one, right, with creating alleyways and walkways down, is that it be maintained by the property owner, but be available and open to the
Correct.
public.
Yep. The next one is an example of, I think, a successful path, I think we all agree, East End Arts, you have this wonderful open down into the
Yeah.
open space.
Yeah.
Just,
But then again, I mean, I've said this and I've talked to everybody at that's a beautiful spot, and I always like to showcase that on Main Street.
Right.
But it looks private to me. I don't feel compelled, I'm just saying how I feel, I can't tell me how I feel, I mean, when I walk down with my family, I feel like that's private property.
that you can't
Yeah, if
use
you're
it.
not going to something at the East End Arts, then you're
Yeah,
not, you're
right.
not welcome to just peruse the
Yeah,
area,
right.
have lunch
And I
on the
told them, I
deck,
said, it's
the
beautiful, I
benches.
mean, I do go there, cause I know that they have events there and stuff, but, I mean.
If I went and got a sandwich, do I feel comfortable eating there because I'm eating at somebody else's
you know what I
place?
mean?
So, yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe we could call it East End Arts Park, seeing as we own the property.
Well, I know that as a councilman,
I'm
but
saying,
as a
Jeff's saying
citizen,
with
I mean, you really feel
signage.
like, because of the wrought iron
Right.
gates and all that.
But again,
that
that
it's sort of
goes to
private.
the purpose and intent, if people don't know what the intent of it is, they're gonna be less likely to use it.
Yeah, right.
And I don't think we have clarity on what the intent of a lot of these are, so I think
Perfect,
that needs
exactly,
to,
yep,
needs to be
that's exactly,
identified.
yep. On, going to page
I
4,
love it, but I love the property.
we have, another example, I think of a really successful walkway, this is next to the, sushi, restaurant, and there,
And top
Haiku?
about it, yeah,
Yeah.
this is a very successful walkway, yeah.
you've got that nice landscape bed, it's wide open, you've got a, 10-foot bed, a wide, 10, you know, here 10 feet is a typical alley width in downtown, plus it has a 4-foot, planted bed.
So this is 14 feet actually?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, building to building,
Well,
yep,
this is wider, but this is also an example of what they keep talking about, that the planners and people on the downtown committee keep talking about, how they want, you know, some sort of entryway into the business from the alleyway, or
Yep.
something that draws people into the alleyway,
Mhm.
and this is a perfect example of that. Of course, it is wider, but not
But-
by that much.
and then you have the,
One
kind of the
foot.
opposite end of that, where you have a 10-foot alley.
4 feet. This one is 14 feet.
Yeah, no, I'm
It's
talking,
quite large.
but,
Oh, I
right,
thought-
I'm just talking about
Oh,
just the.
10 plus 4, okay.
Right, so it's 10-foot walking, and, but
Yeah.
here, kind of an opposite of that is next to the Suffolk Theater, it's also 10 feet wide, but you have a blockage with a staircase, and again, you don't know what's on the other side, and there's no signage as to guide the pedestrian
Rear parking lot or
right
parking
going
available.
down
down
to
to,
Suffolk,
if you
yeah.
go to the other side,
Yeah, that's never been
downtown
done.
Main Street,
Municipal lot.
right,
And there doesn't look like any sort of lighting that I can see here.
right, so it's not an inviting environment to wanna be,
And not only that, when you come out the back end of it, there's a big fence that creates an even longer walkway.
right.
True that.
On page 5, here's an example I consider to be a successful walkway because of the church being there and the open space in front of the church.
Benjamin Street?
Yep, and then you got, you know, a wall, luckily you have some artwork that makes it somewhat interesting to wanna go down and see it.
Well,
And it
we
was
have
just
new,
all-
We should have something a little
and
different
we
than
have
that.
new,
Is that what you call it?
stones on it, we did, the town.
It looked nice when it went
I'm
there,
not
the church
judging
was
the
like,
art,
what
but there is something of interest.
Right.
And it's wide open because of the church property, not
And-
because of the.
And that was just repaved with stamped concrete.
Right, and that's why you see the 2 cones there.
Yes,
I thought
thank you.
that was privately owned, no? Oh, no,
No,
that's
town
street,
road.
an abandoned street,
That's a
right?
town road,
Yeah.
It used to be a horse and buggy road.
And that's a well-used
Right, cause
walkway.
Rimland was coming in, he wanted to use that.
And it's more inviting, you take a look at that and you don't feel like, you know, it's
Oh, that's a
lot of light
major
there.
walkway, that's a major walkway
It
from
is,
the back part.
and the way the church has it landscaped along the side is
Yeah.
really nice, such a
And churches provide a sense of, you know,
beautiful.
security and you wanna see the church, it's a beautiful church, you wanna go see it.
That's what sort of hopes on. Now you gotta give me some people on Main Street to go there, I'll be happy.
And then on page 6, here's some examples of some access ways that are not well defined as to who owns them, what their intent is for, and, or where they go.
Oh, yeah, I think, yep, you're right.
Yeah, then the one that's between the Salvation Army and the Rendezvous, and then this, between the subway and
That's not
the,
even, that's a roadway for the back of the I don't even think that's a pass-through.
right, the one, yeah, and you don't know what it is, unless you, even if you're a patron of the subway,
Even the one next to Subway, I think that just goes through a couple of apartment houses in the back.
Jeff, those owned by the property owners?
yes.
But you're saying these are, you know, pass-throughs that you could do something with.
No,
Correct.
no.
You could,
Could
We- but
encourage
we-
them.
redevelopment.
But we would have to zone that in, we don't own them right now, there's
no,
not,
I'm saying
they're
it
not
for
I know that.
redevelopment
Yeah,
purposes.
yeah.
Yeah, but if you just have to walk another, 35 feet past Subway and you got the roadway that goes into the back.
But I think you also have to remember, when you look a lot of stuff about walkability and what creates a walkable community and how they're successful, you know, part of the issue of having that walkability is not to have these blank spaces without interest. So I know that, you know, I think we have to be very careful about trying to create too many paths down to the river, and then we lose the concept of the walkability on Main Street. So where you have these driveways here, these breakups here, in particular on this end of town, is very difficult, because you have the aquarium, then you have the gas station that bumps back, you lose the interest on that side. And on the side between the Preston House and the funeral parlor, there's a lot of driveways there also. So there's a lot of breakup of space to not have people continue to keep on walking further down to Main Street. So we have to be conscious of that as we're looking at this also.
You got municipal lot, is the way you got there.
Right, but you have a lot of spaces, a lot of open space in front of the Preston House, in front of the house that we're redoing, in front of the funeral parlor, and the same thing is mirrored on the other side. So if it wasn't mirrored on the other side, it's just, when you look at the walkability, or if you research the walkability of stuff, when you start to break things up like that for house after house after house after house, it really reduces people's desire to continue, walking forward.
So I think
It's just, that's what studies show with
Yeah,
that type, so to keep these driveways here and to try and, you know, consider, maybe we want these to be made, bigger paths or paths down to river, these spaces here, so because you have them across the street and there are historic homes, you may not want to make the pathways here, but make these more continuous build out together.
And I think when we
So
see
there's
develop,
not blank spaces,
Right.
there's
Well, I
not dead
think
space.
that the property owners would probably agree with you.
Yeah, no, I
No,
think
I
that
agree
would
with you.
be, I wouldn't
Right.
want to hamper them with having to maintain alleyways down to to the waterway that may really not enhance the walkability of
right,
Main
and,
Street.
and as Jim pointed out, you got McDermott Street, just, you know,
Well, you got the
50
parking
feet
lot
away.
next to Savage.
But I
Yep.
would think on the south side, you want more
Right.
walkability on both sides of Main Street, because
Yep.
all our talk for many years
Mm-hmm.
has been, you know, to have the stores, if possible, also face the river.
That's a
So that is where you want walkability going around both sides on the south side. I
but-
mean, I understand what you're saying as far as the flow's concerned.
But you don't, because then what you end up is individual shop, individual shop, individual shop. So I come here, I walk down here, I come here, I walk down here. It should be a flow of traffic goes this way, and then everybody enters this way to the downtown part. And then you have, retail here also on the back end. But if you, the walkability is to not have these dead spaces in between in the downtown.
See,
No, but also in the back, you wanna, we want to have the south side, the back of the stores, to be drawing people back there too.
Absolutely.
That's why we're talking, we keep talking about putting more public space back there, to keep people moving. I know what you're saying, but,
I
just
think-
on the south side, I wanna keep them walking around. And
Me
sorry,
too.
Jody, one more thing.
I
And
agree.
we've talked about, Glynis talked about that walkway that she thought, Jeff, remember, the walkway that she has on the back that sort of connects the stores.
But if you have a main promenade from Main Street, or two main promenades from Main Street, down to the back half, or also to, whatever's gonna go on the north side also. If you have promenades that draw people and tell people where to go, but basically you're creating silos if you have walkability around every single one of the
I
buildings.
agree, that's why I think when we put the Riverhead Square right there, where the old Sleazy's was, that's gonna be the main drawdown.
I mean, we already have
Through that park.
East End Arts. I mean, East
Absolutely.
End Arts can be enhanced the way it is right now also, to create
Oh,
that promenade.
Absolutely.
Well, what we need is something that draws the eye down further, so
And
you
you know-
keep going, and one problem that we're all addressing too is stores that look more interesting with varied lines and different facades on the front, and things that draw the people down and intrigue them to walk a little farther.
I agree with you 100%, and I see down some of these walkways and these alleyways, if we were to create a 15-foot sidewalk yard, I see several stores being accessed off the alleyways on the first floor, so that you're not just having a store in the front and a store in the back, you're having, like in Italy, when you walk by and you have the,
Right.
the signs that are perpendicular to the building with the,
Haku.
it's smaller stores, which
Right.
is the desire for the mom and pops of today,
But-
and the smaller businesses, so.
But even in Italy, the stores are not broken up by shop. They're broken up by a contiguous amount of space, whether it's, I don't know, Jeff, you know what it is, it's 50 feet or 60 feet or 200 feet, whatever the contiguous amount of space is, that's supposedly the ideal amount of space when you're developing.
Right.
So you still need that contiguous amount of space before an alleyway, because if you have just alleyway, it breaks up that walkability that statistically is known to work.
Right,
Well, in
but I'm,
Barcelona, you'll have a big, long building, but a lot of little shops within it.
right,
Absolutely,
And
I mean,
that's-
Get
yes.
lost in all those little alleyways.
and that's why I'm saying, like, with the 15-foot side yards, and Jeff is doing the analysis for us, but I don't think it's appropriate, so I agree with both of you, I don't think it's appropriate for every alleyway that we have downtown now, but I think that it is appropriate, especially when you're buying two properties, merging them together, that you have at least one alleyway that you can access side stores going down that alleyway.
Well, certainly, I think that it's important for us to look, you're saying there are studies, and I certainly think it's important for us to look to studies and what experts have told us, and, we can have our vision and work on that, but we also have to read up and,
Right, we got a lot to think about.
you know what I like that you're working on the whole walkway thing, like Laura said, and like everyone has said, the idea of the walkability of the whole downtown. I think it also you know, when we talk about having stores that open to the alleyway, it makes things more inviting, and talking about moving, our big ideas to move things around and highlight the river, so, I feel like
agree.
it's a step in the right direction.
I think it sounds good.
Down a good, we're headed down a good path.
But the only big elephant in the room is the fact that we're creating walkability, but we're not creating the generation.
Right, the destination of the.
Oh, yeah, we're
you need
working on
that,
that too.
and with that, people will walk.
You gotta
Generate-
figure out
gotta
something with
generate-
all those big
Build,
empty
build,
stores.
build it and they will come.
Well,
Jeff,
true.
We
So, that's what Kevin Costner said.
Jeff, we have 10 walkways right now.
Yep.
Do you see any of them going anywhere? Do you see any of them disappearing and creating a bigger walkway somehow? Or do you think those walkways are good where they are, and we need to, if you had to add, how many walkways would you say that we need to add to access?
That's the next step in the analysis, because we have to see how the downtown wants to build out, where your destinations are gonna be.
Cause there is a
Yeah.
dissection between East Main Street and West Main Street, and we all know where that is.
Where
If it
is
wasn't,
that? I
and if
don't
it
know where
wasn't for
that
the
is.
theater created some synergy between East and West Main Street. But I can tell you, and Tim can tell you too, from being foot cops on Main Street, that when that Suffolk Theater closed, it was almost a whole block of it was east and it was west, and there was nothing to the center, so.
Very true.
I mean, personally, I think there's 3 sections to the downtown area. I think it gets chunked out in three separate sections. I think you have, you know, sort of a little bit, some, say from Roanoke Avenue, you have going west, and then you have from Roanoke all the way over to say right before the funeral parlor, and then from the funeral parlor heading east a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think they kinda get chunked out, and I think the size of the buildings, honestly, for those 3 areas are a little bit different also, because I think very far west, I think you have a lot of the buildings there that pretty much, can support a little bit of a more closely, a denser build out as far as the buildings next to each other without adding additional walkways necessarily
Oh,
there,
I
because
agree.
there's no
Oh, I
walkways there at
definitely
this
agree.
point right
Yeah,
now.
right.
I think, you know, if you expand where the, East End Arts Center is and kind of create that
little more historic down on the east
promenade
side.
area there. And then I think you don't really need too much more of, you know, further east from that, you may need one big, more chunky walkway, but you have the aquarium there also, which blocks off the back part, and they have a
Well,
lot
they
of
weren't
their
supposed to.
mechanicals back there also, so I don't know, you know, do you want people traversing past that, or would you like them to walk a little bit further down towards McDermott
Well,
Street,
when
and
they
then
came
head
in with their
down that
first
way?
original site plan, when they first came with the original site plan for Atlantis, the whole idea, and then when we put in the Hyatt, and they came in and they were pretty big about saying how they're gonna create a walkway that's gonna start at the Hyatt, and will go all the way down along the riverfront. And it was supposed to be one continuous walkway, so you could walk down and walk through their property, you know, 'cause they got a little Scoops ice cream place and all that stuff there. But then they put a fence there, so you get down to the end where the boat ramp used to be, like behind the Salvation Army, and there's a fence, so
Right.
you almost feel like, oh, I can't go in there, but you're supposed to go in there.
Oh, there's a private dock there with the houseboats that are tied up there, and,
But that was supposed to be
Right, I know,
dedicated to public
right,
access.
Just on a side note, one of the things that breaks up the downtown, let's face it, are all the big, empty, dilapidated buildings. And if we're going to continue trying to revitalize our downtown area, we need these owners to come around and work with us on these buildings that are oversized, outdated, in bad shape,
We need a
and empty.
rampant dump truck to just.
Well, they
and we need a bulldozer to take a couple of them down and make that village green, downtown would thrive with that atmosphere, with that public space down there.
Right.
If we could take out a couple of those buildings, the
West
landlords are
Marine.
certainly not our friends down there, and they've shown that for
We
time
need
and
to
time
get-
again, they want high rates for their rents,
Right.
and people aren't renting them, and they just sit there vacant, and
Well, I think it's even more that they want high rates for the rent and people aren't renting, I don't think they're rentable, I don't
No,
think
right,
that
you
they
gotta
are
put
in
$1 million
good
in
That's
there,
the
you
other
have it.
side of
right now, so
Absolutely.
code enforcement,
Let's
and
get the zoning in place and then find out what they're really worth and then.
well, the
worth-
code enforcement has gone into, the buildings as well as, fire marshal, they've
Oh,
been in.
I got a whole
in-
study, I went through them in a while
they
ago,
just
2000,
went in.
No, they went in,
2009, we
they
got
went
pictures
in,
and everything, they were
they,
shot then.
they went in last month.
Yeah.
So they're
They
going
did 9
into the
years later.
buildings, they will be inspecting the buildings for their fire inspector and safety, and we expect the landlords to bring those buildings into compliance, to be able to be rentable and that they're safe, so we'll continue, working that as well as working, through this.
that ties all into the whole DC one thing that we're working on, because if we limit the height and the restrictions on what can be, say, on the south side of Main Street, ideally, that property becomes less valuable, so these landlords are not gonna be thinking they're sitting on the golden egg as much as they really are, because if you can't build 5 stories on the south side anymore, that land is no more, not as valuable as it once was.
And
Well,
they're
I
not,
think
you're not
I think
sitting
it does
on,
carry a lot of value though because of the views.
and you're not
So
sitting
I think-
on a golden egg if your building is structurally not safe.
Absolutely
And
correct.
honestly, I'm so glad they got in there, our code enforcement did a great
That's the
job, and
property.
some of the buildings, I thought they said they hadn't been into for 10 years, so.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or
once
that.
again, we need these, we
Which
need
species
the
we-
landlords
98?
down there to get on board with us, or they're a roadblock to
Right.
revitalizing our downtown, and it hurts our entire town.
Didn't go over
Agreed.
this year, I think, when I went.
Unfortunately, it leads to the roadway of condemnation, which is, to me, is a bad word, because it costs so much money to do it. And I think we've learned in the past with the town that, perfect example up on Route 58 in Pulaski
Pulaski.
Street, how it was done and how it became very costly to do. But I think we also, we can't not say that we have to look into it. We really have to give condemnation a thought.
Well, eminent domain has always been a tool for public, as long as it's for public use and public spaces, which I think you can demonstrate. And eminent domain, of course, on the flip side, is always highest and best use is what they're gonna come back with. But
You know-
through comprehensive studies that we're doing now, if we're gonna diminish some of the heights on the south side because we wanna make it a more walkable, more enjoyable, more open to that riverfront,
Right.
which we wanna showcase, then the highest and best use question is not what it was now.
Correct.
Correct.
And I look at, these properties are all for sale, so rather than condemning them and paying larger value later, 10 years from now when it's settled, that if we wanted to buy them, we could buy them.
I would like to see, you know, I don't think anything is off the table. I think
Right.
that getting into the building, seeing the conditions of the buildings, we expect the buildings down there to be rented and in use and not be a blighted property, which brings down the revitalization, the ability to do things downtown. We do have the opportunity zone down there now, so we're hoping, we just had the meeting on that the bid and the CDA and, the IDA ran. So hopefully there will be investors coming in that can work with some of these people that have these buildings, when they know that they need to put a fair amount of upkeep into them, that they will consider their options at that point, so.
Yeah. And a lot of people did come up to me at the Opportunity Zone conference at the, Indigo, saying that if you take it down to 2 stories, we're not coming. So, and I know that they, and I know that they said it to you too also.
Some of them are developers that have been around a long time, and I think, that's good, and we're also looking to bring some new people in.
Right, but the Opportunity Zone hasn't been around a long time, so the Opportunity Zone is new, these people wanna come, they wanna invest, and because the 5-story zoning is attractive to them, and they're saying that if you're knocking it down to 2 stories, we're not coming.
But I don't
And I think they told both of you
But
that.
I don't think we've knocked it down to 2 stories, we knocked it down 1 story to 4 stories, we knocked it from 5 to 4, we didn't knock it
Okay.
down to.
Well, the bottom line is that, you know,
We'll have the
it's
public
more to
hearings.
Main
Two
Street than the
stories.
south side of Main Street, and that river belongs to Riverhead. So, I mean, investors don't wanna come, you're gonna throw a lot more value on the north side of Main Street if you create open vistas to the river on the south side. If you get some public space on the south side, that's gonna blow up the values on the north side, and that's gonna be very attractive to investors as
And
well.
I agree with you completely, and quite honestly, I am not interested in having a couple developers tell the rest of our town what we're gonna do with it, so.
No, but Jim, I thought, I thought your
I think
approach
we
was
need to be
always,
business-minded, I understand what you're saying.
there has to be a return on investment, otherwise the buildings are gonna stay exactly the way they
Well,
are.
that's what I was gonna ask you, cause at the last meeting you said you were gonna meet with somebody and get us some numbers on return on investment
Yes,
from Conifer.
one of
Were
the
you able to
brokers
do
that sell, Larry Oxman is
I
working
have a
on
meeting
it.
with Mitch Pally next week too, but, you know, but, you're right, I mean, you have to look at return on investment, what's gonna be attractive to developers, but what's also gonna fit the vision of where this board's gonna land.
Understood, but I think that with the motions that we're going through now, as far as developing smart in creating public spaces or these POPs, that you can allow development to occur on the north and the south side and still have these open spaces created that are built by somebody else other than the town and the taxpayers.
Oh, I agree.
Well, our DC one isn't huge, but our whole downtown area is, and there's lots of places that we can put taller buildings. We have lots of areas, we've got the courts, we've got over by the railroad station, and I feel like if we're gonna revitalize our downtown, we've got people, and we can't mamby-pamby around. We've gotta push forward, and everybody's gotta be on board, including those landlords that are, you know, letting those buildings go to pot.
So,
Fine, it's almost legal.
next week, Wednesday night, a meeting with a joint meeting with the Landmarks and ARB. And after that, we're meeting with the downtown subcommittee on design. So, next Thursday, providing I can consolidate all their thoughts, I can at least give you a verbal update as to what transpired on Wednesday night, cause that's 3 different groups meeting to talk
Well,
about
I
this.
know there was at the last town board meeting, and
It's gonna be
I gotta
louder.
get a copy of the DC one's draft so far that we have, and I realize it's gonna be tweaked a lot more, but,
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I know the IDA wants to look at it, I know that the parking district wants to look at it.
And the bid, and the
Well,
chamber.
I think we should have, I think that it was brought up about having a community forum on it, I think that's an excellent way to do it, I think
Yep.
there's still a few more tweaks that we need to work through with a couple more of these meetings, I think, and then after that, we will have a better idea of the 2-story, what's the 3-story, what the 4-story is, what the setbacks are, what we're looking for yard setbacks, whether we're looking, you know, if you already have an existing building, build out 100%, and how that works. I think once we have those last little bits worked out, I think we should have a community forum where we invite the groups to come in, and it's a listening session. I think that, you know, because, I mean, I think we learned from the bamboo, you know, kind of that if we
Bamboo's
put
always
it
used
through
as an
as a public hearing right away, there's a lot more voices that I think we need to hear first before, and tweak a couple things before we do a public hearing. So I think that is really what we should do. I would love to aim for at least the 3rd week in January of possibly holding the first one, so if we can kinda keep this schedule tight, and keep working forward, and then towards the 3rd week or the last week in January, we can hold a public, forum where it will be a listening session as to what the community wants.
Cause I know what we want,
and
but there's
then-
a lot more smarter people out
We
there.
did that when we started the BOA study, where we had it at the Suffolk Theater, and they had the boards up, and they had, different sticky notes of what people's
Sticky
wish
notes.
lists would be, and they would stick it on the board and say, this is what we want here, this is what we want here. And it was done very well, so I think it's a good idea, and, it'll give us a better idea as to what the community that is coming to downtown is interested in.
And by the
And
way,
what's
the BOA
important.
study is still a good reference.
Oh, yeah.
BOA study has
Absolutely.
great things in it. And,
Absolutely.
you know, when you talk about the forum, I mean, let's face it, when we all come to the table, you know, we get a lot more done. Jeff and I are gonna be talking to the ARB and Landmarks, and they've been giving us some great suggestions.
Yeah,
And then the IDA, some representatives from the IDA have asked to come to the downtown committee, which I think is a good idea. And certainly as a board, we've all been hashing it out, so let's keep pushing forward.
Yeah, the Landmarks had a meeting scheduled for the following week of the 19th, and I had sent the whole Landmarks Commission an email saying that it might be a good idea to do a joint meeting of the Landmarks and ARB, which will be held on December 19th, if anybody's interested in coming at 5
For some
o'clock.
reason, they didn't wanna meet on December 24th.
Well, we were gonna change it to the 23rd, I
Scrooge.
think, or the
It's Christmas
22nd,
Eve.
something like that.
Christmas Eve.
And just to keep some of the projects that we have downtown moving forward, you know, they just did Benjamin Place, they just redid the walkway there, that was a crumbling walkway, so we were able to receive some grant funding for that, this year, so that was redone in some stamped concrete. Also over by the community garden, the concrete was breaking up there a little bit, so that walkway is also being replaced, as well as the road behind the community garden, which was, in great disrepair, that was all repaved over there. And I have to say thank you very much to the folks running the community garden. We had asked that, They had a lot of trees in the front of the community garden, which obstructed your view, to see Grangeville Park, and they went in and they cleaned those out, so now as you're walking along Main Street, you can see clear through to Grangeville Park, which looks really nice, so I have to thank them for that. And what we will do, we do also have money that we have coming in, as I said, about the signs, and about the lights for downtown, so I will ask, to have, the folks come and present to us, and I'll have you here for that, Jeff, also, just to show the plan of where they are preparing to put those in, so if anything needs to be tweaked before they're actually put in, we can do that before anything goes there.
Two more things, I think that Conifer is changing somehow the glass in their gallery, I'm told, somehow in the front.
The entire lighting inside is going to be
Right.
changed. It's not a simple swap out, because they're under the building code. There's this whole energy efficiency, so it's requiring basically a total gut job of all the lighting, but they're doing it.
They could just pull those panels off the windows so they're not
Yeah.
obstructed for the artwork,
Because
would be great.
it'd be nice to be able to see the artwork.
I
That's what
understand.
it was supposed to be, so maybe that's what they're moving towards with the
I-
lighting on the inside.
I know that they're talking with Conifer about doing it, and they've talked to Brad about what was needed, so all three sides are talking.
Okay,
And
very
since I
good.
see the chief, I'll reiterate that I'm glad we have another sector downtown.
It hasn't started yet.
It's starting, hopefully soon.
Alright, Jeff, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff, that was very pretty pictures,
Hi,
thank you very
Jeff.
much.
And next we will have the
Thanks, Jeff.
monthly public safety update with, Chief.
Monthly public safety update.
Yep.
You got the email already, right?
Yes.
Good morning.
Yeah, I thank you for sending that by the sector, that was great.
This thing is absolutely
I have one, I'm sorry.
You got one?
Yeah.
Presentation, print it out.
And then part two, we have this too. You have that, right?
Yeah, that's attached to this, right, or that's separate?
There was, I think, a different attachment
Okay,
on the
yep.
email.
Do you have an extra copy for the faculty?
You can have the supervisor's copy. Oh, you got it printed out already?
Oh,
Okay,
We're more organized than that.
there you go.
I think it's a hard, no, that's a hard copy.
So I know that you had come last month and reported off, I'm sorry that I wasn't able to be here for that, so, basically what, I don't know if you've went over that, but basically we've asked the chief to come each month to report off on, sort of just state of the town, monthly reports about what's going on as far as, public safety goes, so I will let you, turn it over to you to present.
Sure, the report's pretty straightforward, so it lists out kind of where the crimes are and calls for service are. Crimes are down somewhat from last month, but I don't think significantly, it's probably pretty much the same. It also lists motor vehicles on it, summonses issued, revenues collected.
So, it looks like the lowest number of crime is downtown in the 607.
I do have a breakout I didn't print that out for everybody though, but, I looked at what we call part one crimes, which are the more serious crimes, according to the Uniform Crime Report, UCR. Basically, only had 2 crimes downtown, 1 burglary and 1 motor vehicle theft that would be reported, so.
And downtown is considered all of DC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or that's just the 607? I don't have the map,
Right
I
now,
don't
it's
have the map of the.
yeah, you didn't get one, I don't think.
607 goes from the police station
It's
down to
split
the,
between 605,
Right now, it's still being,
607.
it's still being reported as 607. 608 hasn't started
So-
yet.
So, if for 601, 605, and 607, that encompasses from where to where?
Okay, so 601 and 605 is really the downtown sectors, you would say, as far as patrol cars are. So it's basically east and west of Roanoke Avenue, up to 58, out to 105, and then basically out to Forge Road-ish, from around
That's,
that.
I'm sorry, so
Right,
601, 605,
So look at 601 and 605, those are your motorized patrol,
okay,
okay? And then 607 is your foot patrol.
okay,
So
so
your
these,
foot patrol is all of not all of Main Street, but
so
downtown
this
Main
is,
Street.
so 607 really is just the Main Street corridor?
Correct, and it overlaps 601 and 605.
Okay, so it's really really, if you wanna encompass a larger area, 601, 605, and 607 for the
Correct.
numbers.
Right, but 601 and 605
have them-
go all the way down to Route 58.
Right, 58 and over to 601 goes over to 105, 605 goes all the way over to Cromer Avenue, Forge Road.
It's still not a big area.
No,
Yeah,
there's
it's not
still,
big
there's,
at all.
there's small areas for sure.
No, but I'm talking about the immediate downtown,
like
like
603.
Maple, Union, East.
Yes, we looked at,
But
right,
that's 601 also, right?
overlaps.
Overlap, so it's, you know, when you see the number 27 here, and then you see 75,
Yeah,
So-
so I just wanna know, like, in the heart of downtown, like, I think that should be a separate sector to itself.
what,
We've
this,
looked at, our numbers reflect 607, which is, we consider the heart of downtown.
Which is what? And that's where the foot patrol is.
That's the foot patrol,
So
correct.
that's from Town Hall
Yeah,
to Griffing,
about town hall,
and
not up to
then-
town hall.
no, where does 607 encompass exactly what?
Right, up to.
I would say Strand, I would say the aquarium and the
Oh,
juries,
I'd say the tracks,
Hyatt.
yeah, the tracks,
So,
Second Street,
so
Third
it's,
Street.
it's basically the aquarium to where?
Griffing,
All the way
Griffin
over
Hardware?
to, yeah,
And then how
Big
far,
National Bank,
how
Railroad
far,
Avenue.
how far north does it go?
to the
up
tracks.
to, yeah, no, Second Street,
No.
Second
To
Street
Second Street.
into the river.
right,
So it's a very, very small area.
it's foot patrol, right.
So what covers, say from Roanoke up to the tracks? What patrol is that? That's 60,
It'd be 01 on the
One,
east
right,
side,
on
this
5
wa-
on the west side.
And
Oh, so that's where it's split,
all
it's split on
anybody
Roanoke.
else's area, that's
What's that?
it's split down Roanoke.
Yes, Roanoke is the dividing point between 01 and 05.
Alright, so, not to do with the numbers, but for the new sector, when are you gonna present to us the new sectors? Because this
I gave that
seems
to you
like,
in the proposal, it was attached.
but does it make sense with the numbers the way we have them? Because you have a sector here, 607 with 27, does it make sense the way way it's gonna be broken up with, like, I mean, you have it divided down Roanoke Avenue?
Right,
I mean, does that how long have these sectors been in place?
Oh my God.
601, 605 have been in, as long as I know.
So that's
As
what I'm
long as
saying.
I've been
Does
here,
this-
so
do
it's a
these-
long
The way
time.
these are broken up still makes sense for our town with the numbers we have, because we have one unit that has 27, if you just look at the numbers, and I'm just going these numbers, this is why you need to look at them year after year and what's going on. But in 607, we have 27, in 601, we have 75.
Right,
You know,
so-
and they're patrolled
But I think you're looking at different things there.
okay,
You wanna have a foot patrol presence on Main Street, no matter how much crime really you have down there, right?
We
I mean,
want-
that was the thought process behind that, and that's been in effect since I became chief, and,
but we wanna reduce crime, right? So that's, and
Correct.
creates a safety. So I'm asking you, with the way these numbers are, because do you have more people or less people in 607 than 601? Same number of people?
no, well, you don't have, the midnight isn't covered in 607.
But, okay, so let's just say during the day, but you have
During the
27
day, I have the
incidents,
same.
and I'm just doing a broad stroke here.
Right.
But you have 27 incidents in one and 75 in another.
Correct.
Yeah,
So you
one's a
think you-
patrol car.
Yeah, but you have to understand,
What the heck?
from
No,
midnight,
you're adding one, that's what I'm
from
saying.
midnight to 8 in the morning.
Is it adding,
from midnight to 8 in the morning, any numbers that possibly would be 607 numbers would be in 601.
but
And
wait a
those
sec,
numbers,
so here's 601 here, and here's 607 for midnight, right?
Right.
So 607 at midnight, we have 3, and we still have 10 in 601.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying, so are these divided up, should more of 601 be in 607? That's what I'm
were
saying.
these broken down?
They
these
were all by
broken down by
shift,
who handled
No,
the
shift.
call?
by who handled it, right.
Right,
Wha-
so you
how's-
gotta keep in mind,
Shift and who handled the call.
correct. So
Oh.
607 may have handled the call, possibly in 601 sector. 601 may have possibly handled the call
Right,
that
it's how they're
607 would have
reporting it.
handled, but if 607 was tied up on an arrest or on a different call, then 601 would cover that call. So these numbers aren't exactly what
So maybe we need to
601
add that if people are covering at a sector.
Oh, boy.
Well, that's gonna be difficult to do.
But you have somebody go around to, you have, you
Just
have your
trying to
sector
think how to
cars,
do that.
you have your sector cars,
Right.
right? And then who?
I don't know
who's-
why you need that.
Yeah, I don't understand either.
I don't know why you would
Who's
need
the head
that.
of sector cars? Who
Squad
watch,
sergeant,
squad sergeant, okay.
It looks like most of the,
I'm just trying to see, to creating a new sector, if manpower wise, how it works.
In 601, 605,
Yeah, well,
and
it's-
607,
so-
it looks
so-
like,
All be one section?
Have you done your ride-along yet? You'll see exactly how it works.
I don't know, that's what I'm asking.
So the thought process behind creating two foot patrols downtown was the one foot patrol was too large.
Right.
So we wanted more of a presence, so we're
Correct.
not basically looking at the crime stats, you're looking at basically what you want down there.
So where is the foot patrol going to be?
It's gonna, in the future, we said two sectors, 607, 608.
Right, so
we're
where's the six-
dividing it on Roanoke Avenue.
So
607
608 would be predominantly in the 605
West.
sector of downtown.
Correct.
607 would
East and
predominantly
west.
be in the east section, the downtown section of 601.
And are they going up to the train station?
Yes,
Okay.
and up to Polish Town, actually, 608 will go up to Polish
Yes.
Town,
but
As
most,
foot patrol?
as foot patrol.
Okay, so can you provide us the map of that?
You got that already.
Could you
was
send
in
it again?
Sure, it's in the proposal, but I
Okay.
will send a proposal again.
Okay, yes.
so most of the activity seems to be town code violations and miscellaneous investigations in those three sectors downtown.
Well, there are a lot of domestics there.
Yeah, domestics is high.
That would be miscellaneous investigation, right?
No.
Yeah,
you
just,
list
well,
it as
keep in
domestic.
mind, you gotta compare apples to apples, 601 and 605 are business and residential.
Right, they're
607
right.
and 608 are basically just gonna be
Right.
commercial.
At 9 o'clock, the covers are rolled up,
Right.
you're not gonna, you might get some
It's a
summonses,
whole
but you're not gonna
different-
get a lot of interaction
So the
with.
apartments start to go up, and then that'll.
Well, then that will
Change
bring
around, too.
Well, that's
life
what I-
24/7
Yeah, I mean, does anything, I mean, because you have different areas that things happen differently during the day than in the evening, some are quieter during the day, some are not as
Right.
quiet in the evening, does that shift any of your manpower?
It does.
Okay, and how
For
is that
sure.
done?
On midnights, we go down, we have no Main Street person, no walking Main Street person.
Okay, but I mean, in the other areas also?
Besides for that, no, for coverage wise, you need the 5 sectors. It's a big area to cover,
No, I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm asking,
right.
but the patrols all stay the same.
Patrols all stay the same.
And you have a K-9, and you have a couple of spare units that float.
But the
Yeah, the only ones that have
railroad
changed are
station is
really,
all the time, where, like, downtown you shut down, but the railroad station area.
will not be, so on
Outside of your-
midnight,
on the
patrol,
last
I'm
page,
covered by
I think.
605, correct, motorized patrol.
Okay.
The only other thing we added was
That I
the-
don't see crime.
was, 58 corridor, so we added a 606, which is basically a 2-tour also, that covers basically all the businesses on.
58, and they needed that.
That's what I was wondering, okay.
Yeah.
and handles a lot of pet
Those are the-
larceny calls.
Right, a lot of pedal larceny
Right,
calls.
between Tanger
Majority,
and
for
your
sure.
box stores and everywhere else, that's basically what that sector does.
Okay.
Which was a great addition, because otherwise you were losing an entire sector,
To go to-
605
Right, well, yeah,
predominantly,
yeah,
or
yeah.
03,
Right, you had 603 sitting on.
going
58.
completely, cause they were in processing somebody on a pedal larceny arrest, or shoplifting arrest. And that's really what you're doing here by adding 608, you're kind of helping with the two sectors, the two main sectors, and providing a presence downtown that is, in my opinion, much needed, and to have 2 officers down there. You know, having one was okay, but, you know, he's down by Manganos, and
And
then
he's gotta
you've got
run over
8
to,
people up
right.
at the laundromat drinking 40-ounce King Cobras behind the store. You know, it's hard to do that, so,
can't
with
be-
better coverage, it's gonna be a lot
Right,
easier
and you
to,
can't be completely stat generated, because there are places in town where you would say, okay, we could pull this person out of here. The cry from the public is, they're gonna tell you, no, we
No,
want.
I don't
No, if I-
agree with it, but, I mean, I agree with that, but you still have to look at your stats.
Yeah, no, definitely, stats are very important, yeah.
Well, I
But if
definitely
I
like-
tell the Jamesport people that I'm taking a Jamesport car out of there,
No, I'm not,
Yeah, no.
I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, just, you know,
602
to be,
comes
especially in a concentrated area, I know in the bigger areas,
Resident
it's different, but in the
105.
concentrated areas,
602
there
comes in.
certainly is room for flexibility based on the stats of the, a 2-month period or the
Here's
time of the year.
602.
right,
I mean, we know during the summer that there's, even by the train station, we know
Here,
that the train station in the
all
summer is a
here,
much more
602
active
actually goes up to
locality.
Roanoke Avenue.
So, you know, how is
and
that
comes
adjusted in
down
your, how
58.
you station people?
Look at this.
You know,
It's
there's
huge.
got to be some of that, then it can't be, it has to
Right.
be some
And-
flexibility in there, and that has to be based on what your numbers look like over the years.
and I think we
Well,
addressed
because
that with
keep in
608,
mind, this is all farm,
the future 608.
so it's a
I
lot
definitely
of
like
acreage.
the, foot patrol in
This is
downtown, DC one area when we're
it's
having all
any
those summer
any
events,
town
you know,
is
and a
gonna
lot of
be-
people are in there from,
That's where your
I
activity
just
is.
like a police
Yeah, no.
extra police
That's where your
presence when we're
opportunity
having
lies for
11:25 or out in the parks or
Right,
people coming to the theater, I think
That
it's
would be
important
no
for
different.
people to see police in our downtown area.
I totally agree, that's why we established it
Yeah, I
back
was
in two
gonna say,
thousand
we've
and
been doing that
two.
for 40
And
years.
six oh eight and 607, you're gonna do foot and bike, or you're
One
gonna
and
do
five.
just?
Yeah, they'll be bike certified, so they'll have
Number
that
7
option
and 8
to go out on
Split
those.
Street in 1980.
Couple other things, I know we had talked about this, we've been back and forth about the proposal for cameras downtown, where are we with that?
He just called me last week, they're still working on it, it's a big thing to do. So what I've done is I've broken down by map different areas that I think we have to address first, like the train station. So I prioritized them and I said, work on this way first, and he's getting it all together and he's.
Do you have a timeline for that, can we get it
I
done
would
within?
say he's done he'll be done shortly.
Can you just get me a, actual, like,
He can give me probably some projections.
I mean, can you give us a part of the proposal?
He gave us the first part, as far as what we need at headquarters, and then more cameras at headquarters.
Right, but this is
So-
2 months already, 3 months
Yeah,
already,
yeah.
I mean, you should be able to give us
He
some
just called me last week.
are there any other places we can go out and just get some proposals for somebody, from somebody else?
Who's doing it, chief?
A+ Technologies. I can call him back up and see what he's got.
Yeah, tell him we need,
Yeah.
I mean, 2-3 months is,
Okay,
We really
A
need to
bit-
get
a
the
bit
cameras
delayed.
in the railroad station area.
problems with the cameras is they're not cheap.
I understand that,
and-
but we
and
don't know what
getting-
not cheap or how expensive something is until we got it, you know, till we have the proposal, and we do have some grant money available that we're
Well, it's
under the
30
timeline to.
$30,000 just to do headquarters as far as getting that prepared to accept video feed.
I understand that, but let's see what the rest of it is,
Okay.
because we need to be able to, you know, we're applying for grants for this, we do have some grant money available for that, but it's grant money that we have to use one way or another for something, so we need to have what our options are. The other, question I have, a bunch of questions, but the other question is, I know you had talked about the handheld things, I know that you had, talked about, as far as ticketing people downtown, how has that been going
The
since we
old
changed?
fashioned way.
But I mean, since we changed the actual summonses to be written, and everything else, how is that,
Yeah,
what do the
they're
numbers look
riding-
like, are they more or less, or?
I have to look.
Are they chalking tires?
They are.
We need those three-wheelers, did you bring the three-wheeler picture?
I love to have the three-wheelers, they're expensive too, though.
They're
They're like
expensive.
Oh, yeah, let's just
35,000,
keep
but they're a good
spending it.
investment, and they
Yeah,
spit
broke
the
4
tickets
tickets,
out
I
right
think.
side. from the-
93 tickets, parking
Where,
tickets.
what page, which
You're on this one here.
one is that, this one here?
Like-
So that's what I was wondering, so the tracks and the manual,
Those are all, VTL violations, so moving violations basically.
okay, so those are the moving?
Right,
Okay, so 93 tickets, but do we know where were those broken down by sector also?
I would have to see if I capture that.
Okay, could you
Yeah.
put that in there?
Parking tickets, 1,939 to date.
But like, you know, how come some, I know it's during the summer months, but do we follow this year to year, like some months are 119, then you go down to 52, and then you go up to 503?
Well, you have your TCOs working in the summertime, so that's why those numbers are up.
Well, that's why I'm wondering how that works. So
Yeah.
is it, you know,
That's
are we
what it
better
is.
off having, you know, TCOs?
Definitely, parking is
available?
definitely more a seasonal thing,
No,
for
I know.
sure, so. yeah,
But
I
is it,
mean,
is it seasonal because the number of people
Beach-
coming here, or is
beach
it seasonal
permits.
because of the staff?
Beach permits.
I think the influx
So
of people
that's
as
the
well.
parking is the beach, so that's why I'd like to know by sector, so if we know that if the numbers are 503 and that's all happening at the
Right.
beach, or are the numbers happening downtown, or are they happening somewhere else, so does it pay to have somebody, or is it just, it's not a situation that's going on? The other thing I had a question on, for motor vehicles, I know we respond to motor vehicles, but if it's on a state versus town road, does that make any difference for response? No, it's all just one, okay,
And the town of Riverhead.
okay,
Depends on the amount of damage.
and then,
I'm curious as to how many of the motor vehicle accidents are from out-of-state plates that don't have to have the same insurance that we have to have.
Well, police won't keep stats on that, I think.
so a couple.
No, I mean, you could probably check each report whether they had insurance or not, we'll see how many uninsured vehicles were
I'm just curious, because, you
written.
know, our laws are so strict, and I see more and more out-of-state plates coming in, and, you know, they don't have to have the registration, the insurance, the inspection like we do, so, you know, New
I think
York's
most
doing.
states
But
have
it's a lot of
insurances
tourists
now.
coming in to visit from out of state also, to eat here and spend their money here and shop here.
I see a lot of out-of-state plates parked in driveways for many, many years.
Well, then that's a different situation that you can address, because if somebody is a resident here for
30
longer than,
days.
30 days, they're required to change their plates.
right.
So that is a very, very much of a different situation, and if you wanna come up with
Very
a
hard to-
plan, how to address that
very
and
hard
present
to
it.
do.
Address that.
Just surveil it.
Right.
You have to
Very
surveil
hard to
it.
do.
Good luck.
How do you
That
do
car goes
that?
back to
Right.
North Carolina
This
one day
weekend.
and comes back here, the 30 days starts over again. Have you followed that car 24/7? You have not, you're not gonna enforce that. Unrealistic.
So that's your answer, Jody.
It's
No,
horrible, it's a
I-
shame, it's a shame, but in
But I
reality,
think
it
this
just
is-
can't be done.
But
Had
this
that
is,
discussion
yeah, but
already.
you do have, you know, you do have patrols 24/7 around the whole town, so if you have a particular, you know, somebody particular, or you have a particular area or a particular car, that you feel is uninsured, you know,
Yeah, you
They
can-
get a ticket.
You can't pull it over if
No,
you
but
feel
you-
it's
They get a ticket.
uninsured.
No, but you
Right.
can
You gotta
take it,
have a
but if
reason to
they're
pull
here for
that car over.
If they're here for 30 days, if you're seeing the car here for 30 days, you can certainly give them a ticket for not getting
You
changing
haven't
their
seen the
plates.
car for 30 days, you don't work 30 days in a row to, you being one person, have seen that car 30 days in a row to say it's in the town.
Well, you're playing the devil's advocate a little bit there, Tim, but I can
But
tell
you
you now,
can't.
you know darn
You
well
can't
that
do
you
it. I
don't need,
agree with
you
you.
don't need much excuse to stop a car.
But I can't go into court and testify that I know that car was here for
I
30 days.
can follow Denise
I
Civility
can't
for
do that.
3 minutes and
Because I
have
see
some
it when
reason
I
to
drop
stop
my
her
kids
for
off
not.
at
You
school,
certainly,
the same
but
cars
you
in the
certainly
driveway.
have
Guaranteed.
control that goes past a particular spot in a particular
law
area
violates
every
it.
single
Oh,
day,
she'll
3
do
shifts a
something.
day.
Yep,
That's my only point on
right
it.
across from the high school and right down Cranberry and the house on the corner, they're all over the place.
Good
And the
luck,
cars are
people.
there every
Good
single
luck.
day.
But, you know, whether that's the best use of time, you know, that's another.
It's just
that's
driving by
bottom
and
line.
noticing.
The other question I have is the opioids. I know that I had seen in the paper that we didn't have numbers on the number of either Narcan saves or overdoses.
We do, I didn't get them to her, I had to talk to our officer who handles that, but we have those numbers.
So what is our numbers on that?
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
How are they listed in here then?
Narcan, or it's not listed in there.
But why don't we keep track of that then?
Sure. Well, we do keep track of it.
But then how come we don't report all?
If you
It's
wanna
not in here?
report it, I can report it.
So the number of opioid deaths we have, that's in here?
No.
But it would be
Because
in the
what
calls received.
But what, like, we have,
The call
we
of
have,
it would be
we
in,
have
yeah,
death
as
as an
investigation,
aided case or
but we
either
have
way.
death investigation overdose,
Right. Right.
right? That was 6, and that's only up
So,
until November.
so that could be opioid and could not be. That's not ruled
But
out.
it's drug related, or alcohol related,
Could
we
be
don't take them out.
Or suicide.
We don't, how do we know
Well,
an
so-
overdose is, we don't know that.
Well,
We'll know that later on when the ME does the autopsy and says it
Well,
was,
a lot of the other towns, what they're doing with that is they're having, when there's an overdose, they have the detective,
Well, we do-
investigate the case.
Yeah, we're
So-
doing
So
that.
we have the
we're
detective,
doing that.
so when the detective
Matter of fact-
investigates the case, how long does it take them to determine whether it was a drug-related overdose or it was a if Narcan was administered, and what the potential possible, because it doesn't have to be
Well,
definitive,
yeah,
you
there's
know.
more things to it than just what the ME says, I mean, there's evidence at the
But I'm
scene.
just saying, not just the ME, say if
Right.
somebody
Right,
didn't
there's
die.
evidence at the scene.
Okay, so then you should be able to keep
You have a
those
needle
numbers.
hanging out of your arm, it's probably a heroin overdose,
So my question is, how are we tracking those numbers, and where is that number?
right there.
So, but you just said the death investigation overdose, it says 6,
Right.
right? But we don't know whether it's alcohol, whether it's opioids, whether it's, suicide, so how do we distinguish? Because you have a detective there that obviously can distinguish,
Right.
so how are
So-
we tracking that?
It's
Or do we not track at this
It's-
point?
You don't track it, but with 6 cases, you could look up the 6 cases
Right.
and find out, was it alcohol, opioid, heroin, what was it? You know, I mean,
Well,
it's
that's
easy
my
to do.
that's my question, I think it's something that we should, because it's such an epidemic,
Right.
you know, across the country, really.
Okay.
I think it's something we should track to find out, you know, how we're faring here
Well,
locally.
you do keep
with
track,
that.
yeah, you
Oh, we
do
have
keep-
it for sure,
You
yeah.
keep track of all Narcans,
Yeah,
and when they're
Narcan's
used
all-
in
But you
this.
don't keep track of the narcotics.
Well, he doesn't give it to
No,
you,
no,
but he
no,
has the.
No, I've asked for that before, do we have the actual number of Narcan saves we have?
Saves or uses?
Uses.
Uses,
Yes,
We do,
we do.
okay, could you
But
provide that?
that's not only our uses either, because the ambulance uses it too, so I mean, it's like,
But this is what I'm saying,
I
how,
can give
could
you-
you compile the number that, because when an ambulance responds, the police respond also,
Right.
correct? So you get that number,
sometimes the ambulance beats us there and they use Narcan before we get there.
and the police
Or
officer comes and doesn't say what's going on?
obviously, they
But that's my point, and the police officer goes there and
Probably
says,
the best way to do is ask him how it's done, and you might be filled in with a lot more information, you should do a ride-along is what you should do,
well,
but-
no, I've asked
but-
this information for a while, what I've asked for is, how many times is Narcan used in the community, whether it's by ambulance or by police, or even by a citizen that the police show up at, and to just keep a track of that number. It doesn't have to be the police officer physically giving the Narcan, but the police officer, when they get there, know that it was a response that was Narcan was used on. I'm just trying to get the number of ODs we have here, that's basically what, and whether it's, a mother calls and says, I just gave Narcan to my kid, they OD'd, help.
Right,
A police officer's gonna show up for that. You're saying a detective shows up for that, correct?
correct.
Alright, so a detective shows up for that, and all I'm asking is, can we keep those stats? I know we
I'll-
spoke about this when I
no,
first came into office, and
I'll
that's
have
why
to
I'm kinda curious
compile
when we, I know, but, okay.
I don't control the EMS and I don't control the community, so I have to compile them somehow.
But
So
you're
I'm
saying
trying
the
to think,
police
if a
officer
mother
showed-
says she used Narcan, whether,
If a
I mean, it's
police
probably gonna be
officer's-
my narrative, but I don't think I'm tracking it as far as saying, mother called Narcan overdose, I'm not.
Witness, or whatever, Narcan administered by
It's
other.
gonna be sorted by.
Narcan administered by emergency response people, ambulance or fire, Narcan administered by police officer, Narcan administered by other.
It's not gonna be
Yeah.
inaccurate, it's not gonna be an accurate
Are you trying to determine
number.
whether or not the Narcan is effective in our
I'm
community?
trying to find out how many people we have overdosing in our community, and how big a problem is here,
Well, you
and
ha-
is there information that we're not capturing that we need to be
You
looking
have that
at?
number there, the
Okay,
people
wait a
that
second,
overdose.
can you get in touch with maybe some other towns and see how they're tracking
Sure,
it?
how they
I
report
think
it.
that might solve the issue.
Yeah, and
Because it's an epidemic, I think that other towns are probably tracking it, and if there's some way, maybe they're doing it in some way that might work for us, and it would be a good idea for us to track it too.
Well, I think.
But you do have the sheet that Southampton was using, because I went to their task force, you
Right.
went to their task force also,
Right.
they did share the
I
sheet
didn't go
with
to
how,
that meeting.
you went, not the one I went to, but then you went to one after me. You said
I
you
was
did,
never,
maybe you sent
I
somebody.
tried to go to it, but
Oh.
they said, do your own task force is what they said, basically.
You had said that you were gonna go, okay, anyhow, but they have a sheet, so if we could use their sheet or tell their sheet to be able to capture it here.
Okay.
But you do have a way of field search, I mean, any
Narrative
police,
I can search,
any
yes,
police officer
right.
doing a field report's gonna,
Right.
mention that in their field report,
Narrative I
so,
can
even if you
search.
just do a narrative with that as a key search.
Right.
And I don't think that we don't not have the information, I don't think we have the information in a useful format.
I don't know
So
what,
that's
I haven't seen what he's
basically-
got, so I can't make that assumption.
Dave, are Narcans tracked,
We do,
the units themselves that are
do.
distributed within the
we
department?
do,
Okay,
right. So every time an officer uses it,
same
we
as like a
know it.
blood kit or
Right.
whatever you have.
I don't know
for
that
log.
So we can-
specific,
right.
but every time someone uses it, we know about it.
Okay.
Sort of an off subject, but you mentioned the TCOs, is there any training that's been set up or anything in the future? There was talk about
I'm
that,
going to,
that they need more training.
I was
Larry
at some
talking
meeting
about-
that, the fire department said they get training for traffic, so I'm gonna research that as far as seeing what they
That would
have
be great.
available.
And I saw that yesterday was a busy day over by the Cooperage. I saw that you were using some TCOs over there.
Well, they had a pole
They
that
had a
was
pole
down
down.
blocking the
Yeah,
street.
no,
Is that still
I saw
down,
the-
or is that?
no.
It was up
but-
this morning
yeah,
at
it's
6:30,
open.
so, but it was still there last night at 8:30. How does that work, that they can wait a whole day, from 6:30 in the morning until 8:30 last night, leaving this pole across the road, and having police officers at
It's a live wire,
Osborne
it's a
and
live
Sound,
wire.
and like,
I would say
and
probably.
then, I mean, we had police officers all over the place blocking people from using those roads to get down there,
That required a lot of police
We're at
officers.
their
It's all-
liberty.
Yeah, right, it's all based on PSEG.
no, that's crazy that it takes them that long to get down to get there.
They
for a downpour.
prioritize what they're sending crews out on. and if they've got
Looks like
something
you had
bigger
4
going on,
cars
that's where they go.
walking.
That's what they tell us.
One
I
was
see the
a
PSC and
TCO.
GIs
so
every
I'm
day,
not
every
gonna
afternoon,
argue
and
that.
every night outside Bagel Lovers.
And one of my other questions is with these numbers here, so these are
Four
the
trucks
numbers of the
going south
incidents that
front.
happen. How do we track how many arrests were made in response to whatever if it was something that there was a case on, and if there's an arrest made or the case is closed, where is that number?
The number of arrests are in there.
But say, let's
You wanna know specifically what the arrests were for?
I would like to know, okay, say we have, whatever, you know, I don't know what ones of these would have a case that you'd arrest somebody for, right? Anything
Petty
that-
larceny,
Okay, so petty larceny, if you have arrests, so petty larceny in the month of November, we had 42.
right,
How many were arrested? How many people were arrested
I
on
would
that?
have to pull that out.
So that's what I'm kinda curious,
Right.
just to see what our,
You have the overall arrest here, I saw that September was
Right.
your highest
What information
amount
did you
of
want
arrests.
out of the arrest? What would you want?
I'm just saying,
Let's
okay,
know-
you have 42 cases of reported, let's say petty larceny, it doesn't have to be broken down by case, but,
Okay.
you know, so say out of 130 incidents in criminal incidents in November, there were 130.
Okay.
I'm curious how many people were arrested,
Rounded
that's
up
this
arrested.
number here, or is this, it's a direct correlation?
Direct correlation, arrested for a crime.
Okay, so the direct correlation then is that there were 748, no, I'm
That's
sorry.
total,
So there were 67
67.
people arrested out of 130.
Right.
In November.
So do those other cases remain open, or
Yeah.
dismissed, or how does,
Well, you could have someone at Tanger report a petty larceny and not wanna charge the person. Very common, right?
Or you don't
Very
have,
com-
right,
Very
you-
common.
right, you got a petty larceny, but you
Right.
don't have the.
On call.
Right. Somebody just reporting it because they need
Tanker
insurance
keeps
money.
Right,
you guys
exactly.
busy, huh?
He's just
I
busy.
see that the arrests are up in September, that's probably the back to school shop.
Grand larceny's gonna go up next week, cause every Tanger store is gonna realize that they have loss prevention, and they're gonna report all their stuff stolen, if they come in with grand larceny as a being gang.
alright, couple other questions.
Insurance.
On the end one for revenue charts, you have alarm permit fees.
Yeah.
I think these may be not quite, have the explanations that they need to have, I'm not sure, because the alarm permit fees, just checked over there, so there's a permit fee, which is an initiation fee of like $25, right? That's the alarm permit fee. And then there's an annual fee of $10.
Right.
Right, so, but the only amount we have here is $10, this is $25, that's not separated out, right? And then for alarms, for false alarms, apparently there's, when you get a false alarm, where is that fee reported?
It's gotta be in the alarm permit fees.
But then the alarm fee for, if
Yeah, no,
you
they
get
were-
2 free,
they're
right,
putting
third
it-
is 100, fourth is 200.
They're putting it all in there.
So that needs to be corrected, because this doesn't capture what's happening. And it also doesn't capture any of the fees appropriately, because you have an amount here, so there should be an alarm permit fee, there should be an annual, extension fee or whatever, and then there should be some false alarm fees.
This is gonna be the majority of that.
Yeah, and then my other thing with the false alarm fees, do we track numbers with this, where we have, so we know somebody had their 2 false alarms, and now they're on their 3rd false alarm, and now they fall into the $100 fee schedule? How is all of that tracked?
Dan does that, doesn't he?
What was the $10 fee? That was a renewal?
Yeah,
Right. Permit
there's an annual
renewal.
permit fee is $25,
Right.
and then each year there's an annual fee for
okay.
$10. And then for the alarms, when they go off, you get 2,
Right.
there's 2,
Right.
it
Right,
happens
it's at the
twice,
annual.
Yep.
hopefully you'll correct the problem.
Okay.
The problem isn't corrected, the 3rd one is $100, the 4th one is $200, and anything beyond that is $300. But I'm not seeing how any of that is captured.
Well, every single one of these line items can be broken out into 5 different other, I'm sure that you lump it in, otherwise you're gonna look at a 100-page report.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what kind of fees we're getting for
Yeah,
false
But
alarms.
this is also an amount
So it'd
attached
be
to
the
it, and
majority
every
of
one of the
that
amounts is different, so it's not
money
like
right
it's
there.
$25.
And then a lot of it's mitigated through through the
Right,
town
it's not
attorney.
always right, it's
It's in-
not always the $100 fee or the $200 fee or the $300 fee.
So
Well,
who
cause some of it's
determines
just,
that? Okay.
if a squirrel gets in your building and knocks down a ceiling tile and alarm goes off, is that a false alarm? No, it's not a false alarm, it's a real alarm,
So
cause
he-
it was something
He
in the building.
communicates to who? who sends the bill out for the?
Gina's Acorns and
What was
the
that?
Beta Fee.
Gene Hubbard,
Gina Hubbard.
so but that's it, that, okay.
But Billy gets charged for a false alarm, and it's not a false
But
alarm.
I'm just wondering how it's tracked, that's, just because, like I said, this is, you know, it's almost $100,000 worth of fees, and we really don't have any,
Why do we need to know that?
well, because I would like to know how many, which ones, first of all, the amount is wrong, right? You have $25,
Yeah,
and
no,
the amount
that's
range from $25 to $10 to
They're dumping
$100
it
to
all in the same
$200 to
line.
$300.
Correct.
So if I wanna say 19,000 here and wanna divide it by 25, I'm not getting an
No.
accurate picture of anything.
We don't have done
Right?
anything. No, for sure.
So I
they were
think there
dumping
needs
it
to be
into
an
the same line.
accountability here of what's happening.
Sure. I'll
So-
break out fees and.
So,
Are you, what chart are you looking at?
this is
Revenue
on the
on that
top,
last page.
that one.
Where, okay, so
See?
The
$25.
90, so the second line
Yeah.
item.
It's the alarm permit fees.
I see $97,966.
But over there, it's just showing that it's just for $25,
And it's just,
Got it.
and it's just a permit,
where
nothing to
it
do
actually
with
has the
false
fines
alarms.
in it
Yeah,
and
a lot
it
of
has.
those
Well,
fines and.
How many businesses do we have throughout town that are actually have to report their alarms, so,
I don't know,
you know, it's,
off the top of my head, I don't
But what do you
remember.
mean?
so if we have,
How many permits do we have?
yeah, how many permits you have that people are renewing, so if you have 10,000 permits,
Well,
that-
if you knew, if you
I
had,
think
if
it's
you
like
had,
But you
20
capture them at the
2,300.
point of an alarm, if they don't have one, you capture them at that point.
you wanna know what we're collecting as far as those that are getting the 2 free false alarms, and then the third one, they're not, right? You wanna know?
well, that needs to be tracked, but also alarm permit fees, because it's only one time do you pay $25, and then after that, you only pay $10 a year.
Yeah, this,
So-
the
so-
$25
so is
thing
it-
should just go away.
Well, the $25,000 should be there, the $25 should be there for the initial one, but then there should be another line, you know, annual alarm permit renewal fee, $10. There should be a line that captures that.
Well, that's what I'm saying, like, you know, copies of reports, you could break that out into a million ways too. There's $1,989.75, so are you getting a report for an accident, are you getting a report because of domestic violence, are you getting a report for, so every single one of these line items can be broken out into several different,
But it's still the same fee, that's
Yeah,
my
but-
point.
yeah, but with the alarms-
25 cents is 25 cents, copy piece of paper, it's the same fee each and every time.
Right, with the alarms,
you're
at least
lumping different
the
fees
alarm, you
together.
can actually say, I know that I have 300 alarms out there, they're gonna renew this year, so I know that I have, $3,000 coming in renewal
Exactly.
fees. That's what needs to be broken out, I mean, it's nice to know that we're just trying to, I think that's what you're saying.
Yes, it is what I'm saying. And then the copy of reports even for the accident reports, because we've just, I think the contract's ready to be signed, because those will be done by an outside company now. So,
But that's not only accident reports.
well, that's what I'm saying, how would you, we have no idea. We have no idea what percentage of these are accidents, and what percentage are somebody else coming in to copy something, so.
Okay,
That's my point.
The same price, right?
that's,
No,
25 cents or something?
right,
No.
25 cents a page.
no accident reports are going to be
Yeah,
more.
but that's on the,
That's on the
right, new
outside
system, new
agency, yes,
system, right.
yes,
25 cents
You come here, it's still 25 cents.
yes,
per page,
Per page.
Per page.
yes.
cash,
All
and
right.
check.
All right, so you will get the numbers for the cameras,
Unless you know somebody.
if you could resend the, sector for the 607, 608. And you'll come up with some sort of way to monitor for overdose.
Well, most overdoses be handled through the police department anyway, so, I mean, that's probably easy to do. And I know what you have is probably sufficient, you just gotta,
But I don't know that every time the fire department or the ambulance administers Narcan, does the detective show up?
well, it's still gonna be,
I'm
it's
just,
still gonna be a
because you
police.
said a
would
detective
say-
shows up, I'm just
I
saying,
would
do they
say,
call?
no, it depends on what evidence you have at the scene. So if you administer Narcan, they come to, and they're taken to the hospital, and there's nothing else there, I would say
They use the
probably not,
last of
right.
their drug to overdose,
But
they
that-
overdosed on it.
But that's what I'm saying, the other towns are having the detectives go to those,
Everyone,
that's what it seems like, so maybe if you
I'll
could just,
check that.
just take I know you guys have the meetings all the time, just see how other people are,
I'll check that.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, chief.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, now we are on Suffolk Recycling meeting recap, so Drew, Ernesto, Jody?
So Drew and Shen and I attended a,
Fire department?
Drew and who?
Drew and Shannon and I attended a meeting at the Suffolk County Executive's office a couple of weeks ago when we had this, well, actually, the recycling problems started back in the early fall, where the Carters are saying that it's getting more, the recyclables are no longer a commodity, they're now an expense to try and get rid of. So garbage is going up, and disposing of garbage is going up. So the county is putting together a recycling task force, and what they've asked me to do is to take a look at what they wanna put either on the bins, which is on page 11 of this, and they're either going to do a uniform sticker for all of the towns in Suffolk County to put on their refrigerators, or, you know, what can be recyclable, what isn't recyclable. Glass is becoming a big problem and will be a big problem in our next garbage contract. I know Brookhaven has a separate container to dispose of for glass, and they're going from the single stream to the dual stream recycling, where, you know, now, where we were approached a few years ago, right, Drew, that we were approached to say, do we wanna go to single stream? And I said, no, I think it's important that our kids learn the importance of recycling and exactly what containers their food is going into, or their drink is going into, and how to be responsible with it, which has really helped the town of Riverhead, because most of the other towns went single stream. So the fact that we've kept it double stream is a good thing. And our recycling efforts have gone up significantly since I took office, where we were an F grade, and
But now it's no good.
and now, no, we're good in our recycling, and our residents are doing a good job. We've been paid, I mean, we have $300,000 in a bank account that our Carters have been paying us for the recyclables during this contract and other contracts, and fortunately, we can use that money to offset some of the increases. Where we were paying $72 a ton, now the price is going up to $90 a ton, and we have 17,000 tons a day.
What do we do, I wanna know what we as a town, because I have an anti-litter committee that can do that, we have a key club that can do that, we have a new environmental
Open
committee
space
getting
and
together,
environment.
as far as that goes. What are we doing wrong with our recycling?
We're not doing anything wrong, but recycling are becoming an expense to get rid of now, whereas they were a commodity and we were getting paid for them before. So Suffolk County is putting together a task force for all the townships in Suffolk County.
Because
Well-
people aren't recycling the right
Right.
things.
That I think is the biggest point of everything. I mean, it starts at the individual home, and I think that, you know, when everybody first started recycling, there was a big education component to it.
Yeah, right.
And that kinda has gone by the wayside a little, and I think that this is part of it, because even if you do recycle, but if you put things in there that haven't been washed out, or if there's glass in there, or if there's,
Yeah,
you know, things like that, then it contaminates what you've recycled and makes it not a valuable commodity to use. So I think part of this is going back to the education portion of it, and how we can,
That's
as a
what I'm
community,
asking
can
about,
do
because
it.
I'm very particular about recycling at our house.
Grease in a pizza box, contaminated, the box is contaminated.
Worst. Yep. So you can't recycle the
No,
pizza box?
not if it has grease in it.
Maybe we need to get a
Now,
letter out.
now you're saying glass, I thought was recyclable.
We still recycle glass, but there's not really a market for the glass now, because what happens a lot of times is people will put the glass in there and then it breaks, or it's not clean, so there's not as great of a market. A lot of towns are
Well, I
going to
don't
not
really clean
recycling,
mine. I
not,
guess I gotta clean it.
well, yeah, if you don't clean, because then it becomes contaminated, and it's not
I
useful.
think it's gonna a fire, or it would burn
But-
open.
Yeah, but
One
it's
thing
not
that-
great.
One thing that East Hampton said, and it's one thing that I had brought up at the meeting with the county task force, is if the county could figure out one facility that everybody could bring their glass to, and then you can get some regulations changed on the state level to where you pulverize the glass. They're using it for drainage in East Hampton, they're using it for road beds, they're using it for a lot of things. So you have to create new markets as recyclables become an expense to dispose of and no longer a commodity. So it's thinking of new markets, and that's just food for thought as to what came out of this task force meeting. But the one thing that the county wants from us is, do we like this? And does it fit in with what we're doing? And I don't think it does, because I think that the stickers that we
Well,
send
your
out.
name, it's gotta be Riverhead Recycles, not Suffolk, but okay, go ahead.
Well, one thing, they want it to be one big conglomerate of Suffolk Recycles and one name tag, and I said, you're gonna pay for the education and everything, and they said, we're gonna figure that out, but it's, I think that I like the magnets that have the calendar on it, that tells you the triangle is commingled, and then the green
Right.
square is paper. So where this tells you what can be recycled, and they want the pictures, I think maybe the pictures could be on the side of the magnet that show the calendar, so that, you know, you have commingled, and then it has the picture of, you know, the metal cans, the plastic bottles and containers, and, you know, glass. For now, that would work for us, but for other towns, the glass doesn't work, cause they're not even taking the glass. And then under the paper, it would be, you know, newspapers or cardboard, but we need to amp up the education, is what we need to do.
Grease in a pizza box, that
I
is
know.
very disturbing.
Yeah.
Yes,
Cause I have a lot of pizza
exactly.
boxes.
By the way, well, that's just an example that we do need to amp up the education, I agree.
Yeah, because even the bottle caps are not recyclable.
Well, see, now I
So-
knew that, but then I was told 2 years ago that they were.
See, misinformation that's out there about recycling, it's a problem.
And I'm looking at this picture that the county did, and it's got the caps on the bottles, so.
Yeah, I was wrong about that.
So could we actually do a presentation here, or
We
get
can,
something out, I mean,
think it's
we're
something-
right at our table, we don't know everything, so.
We could do something on Channel 22 and just show the different types of recycling and what's contaminated and what's not contaminated. Maybe Ernesto would indulge us again, as he's done in the schools before, and going out and
By the way, I watched
educating.
that.
So your pizza box is gonna go in regular garbage?
Yep,
if it's
Right,
typically stamped.
right.
Cause if
I
it's
mean,
got
like
locale-
paper
locale
towels
What about
that
that
have been in
little,
contact
what about
with
that little
food are
plastic table that
unacceptable.
you get when you buy a pizza box, is
got
that
the cheese on it.
recyclable?
Paper towels for when you're wiping up messes.
Jim wants his
Yeah.
education right now.
The
and,
three-legged
and,
table.
you
This
know,
is gonna be
like,
difficult.
yeah, but some people will take,
Well-
like, when they buy the big box of chips that has like 25 bags of chips in it, they'll take the plastic wrapper off and throw it in the recyclables, like,
No, I don't.
you
I
know,
think
that's.
I think if the board is serious about this and committed to it, I think, and Jim, you and I had talked about this before, I think if you get the kids on board, I
Well,
think they'll
we got-
educate their parents, I
we're-
think if every board member.
Well, in February, the anti-litter, which is 4 of us, are going into the we're going to the middle school
I
to
think-
teach kids about an anti-litter campaign, but if we can incorporate some of this into that.
But I think if every one of the board members would commit to going to one of the schools for an assembly, I think we could probably work with the schools and go in and do one recyclable,
Well, the Key Club can do,
I
we
wouldn't
pay
have
the
a
Key
problem
Club.
doing that, but I think that
That's what they do.
Ernesto's, you know, Channel 22 that he did for, stormwater and for, you know, something similar to that, like, this is
Riveting, yeah, we
recyclable,
could
this
easily do
is not, this is
I just
not.
don't know how many kids are watching Channel
We
22.
could also record one of the presentations to the school.
No, but
Now,
that's
did
what he
you only
did.
go to Roanoke, or that's the one
Okay,
you,
so,
cause I only saw you at the Roanoke one.
That's where we got the
Well,
video?
first I wanna
First
get educated before I go
we'd
anywhere.
But
like to go to
anyway-
a school where they, for the stormwater, probably the same thing with this, where all the grades are together.
yep,
Cause Riverhead's split up at some point, all the schools come together, so this way we hit every
Assembly, yeah, the big.
every
And
kid
if
in one
you-
grade in
and
one
if
shot.
you
But it fits
create a
me, it
DVD, you
fits.
could even put them in the classroom, so that the kids can, you know, take a half hour out of a class day to be able to be educated on it. So, instead of, you know, 5 people saying 5 different things, I think it would be a good idea to make it uniform, and to have one person create a DVD where even during an assembly, they can show it on the screen as to what's recyclable, and then, you know,
Oh, yes, I wanna see you singing on it, Ernesto.
Oh, I don't think you're gonna see that.
Well, I would certainly be willing to go to
Well,
any of the
you know, I
elementary
mean,
schools.
because you do it by PowerPoint,
Yeah, that's
so
what
I
we
think
do.
if you have a PowerPoint, I think we're, you know, we can certainly present the PowerPoint, it's up to you guys if you
You
wanna
put
do
a
it,
program
we can,
together, cause I know.
with anti-litter, I think that's.
Well, Anthony, we're going in for a
come
whole
for
different
you.
thing about, but we can certainly incorporate that, and we have the Key Club in Riverhead that have that whole recycling program.
yeah.
My daughter
That they go in,
used to do
that they go, I used to go with them to all the elementary
Think
schools
they'll make up a
to do it.
skit?
They
can
can,
take
but
to
they
the
can
schools?
certainly incorporate in their presentation whatever we make as far as a DVD goes.
And you know what's been great
Show it
over
on
the
the
years is
smartboard
when
and
the
all
Key
that.
Club came in and they would, you know, you do a little bit of education and then you do like a quiz, like the.
I haven't seen a Key Club since Louise was there, so I have to talk to the new director, and find out what they're doing as far as public outreach, cause I wanna know where the $1,000
Maybe
here.
they
I
would
think
do
we have a lot of
presentation at
volunteers to
work
help.
session. Maybe Key Club could do the presentation here about what the contaminants are, I think
And I
that's what
expect
people
all of
need
you
to
to
know.
be dressed up as either a recycle item or a non-recycle item.
Yeah, I'll come as a hefty garbage.
I think it's important to have one
Comes a
uniform,
pizza box. I'll bring a little table, that thing,
one
the three-legged
uniform
table that
message.
comes with it.
And the kids made it interesting when they would quiz the town board as to, is this recyclable, or is this?
How long does it take this coffee cup to disintegrate? Yeah, that was their
So
whole.
maybe,
It was very
maybe we can
interesting.
make, we can determine 1 month, in the new year, that's gonna be our recycle education
I'm
month,
just-
and we can do that.
And the other side of this is, what about our corner, what are they, is this gonna affect the
That's
next
part of the,
contract?
that's part of the contract, which is executive session, so we have that on for executive.
Oh, do we?
Yeah.
To talk about garbage?
We need a whole work session dedicated to garbage. We do.
So anyway, for now, I think that these diagrams, I think, should go alongside the magnet that we have. I think that's a recommendation that I would make to the county, just so that, you know, we have our magnets already, that's on the side of my fridge, that says, you know, the month, even
Like I always
calendar
look,
of
see,
pickup.
when I put
calendar,
paper
and
out,
then
put-
just to the left of it, you do a diagram as to what's recyclable and what's not recyclable.
Just as long as it's big enough for everybody to be able to see.
Yeah, right,
Yeah, that sounds
exactly right.
tight. There's not a lot of room on the side of it.
But wouldn't it, are they just creating a second magnet? Can't we just give 2 magnets? We'll cover everyone's fridge?
Are they,
I mean,
Doing the magnet and
they'll
paying
do
for
whatever
it?
we want. This is what's on the table right now, and they've asked for the towns to come back with input as to whether or not they like this. So, if you like this and you want this on the side of your fridge, then if the board decides that that's what they want, but take it and think about it, and then next week we'll.
Yeah, I'll look at it. I think that people wanna know what they can't throw out more than what they can throw out.
I think the sticker on the bins is nice too.
Then we're
So
worried about
this
that
is what,
grease in the pizza
this
boxes.
is what they're proposing here, this would be for the bin, but not everybody has a bin. So,
I got a big garbage bill.
me too. So you would
Yeah,
put this
throw
on
it.
the side and.
I put it out
and-
once a month because I wait for it to get full.
But then there's confusion too, because, like, I keep my recyclables, my plastic bottles and my cans and my, you know, jars in just a regular garbage bag. And then when it's recyclable day, which is the day after my garbage pickup day, I take all those recyclables and I throw them in the garbage pail and I put them out at the curb. So, that's all.
take them out of the bag?
Yeah, you can't put them in the bag
You
anymore.
can't put them in the bag.
That's what I do, empty them out, put them in there, but it's,
So I think it's a good idea, and anything that gets the information out more, and I think it's,
But this
I'm
goes so far,
for
this
it, so.
particular county proposal goes far as to even legislating with the state to put a deposit return on wine bottles and
Right.
pipe cider bottles and iced tea bottles and all those things that they find to be contaminated.
yeah,
Well,
I mean,
the point of those is that they get returned for the money, so that it doesn't go, you know, and those get recycled at a
Well, so you know
particular.
that there's some value to them other than garbage.
Right,
Which,
yeah.
see, and like
which
this
is why my
says.
recyclables go out to the street and it's always
So-
half in the morning what it was when I got out at night, cause I don't do that.
So look at this, because like, where it says, do not put
My neighbor
glass bottles or jars in your recycle bin. Check with your local
We got there
municipality
5
for
in the
drop
morning,
off,
go through my
or,
garbage.
you know, some people are allowing glass to be recycled. We are, until our contract's over and for another 4 years, unless something changes.
That's sorry, I thought glass was better than plastic, I really did.
But
I
the
think
glass,
at one point it was.
but the glass jar, if you put the lid on it, then it creates a problem. So you gotta just recycle the glass jar without the metal lid on it.
So it's not commingled anymore, they
Right.
wanna stop doing commingled.
It's gotta be clean too.
Right, and it's gotta be clean.
And unbroken.
Yeah.
That's really the problem with the
Oh,
glass.
so my broken drinking glass I
Do
can't throw in the
people hear
recycle?
what you're saying, though?
I know.
Do you really think the public is gonna
No.
follow this?
No,
As far as washing out a glass jar, putting a metal lid in a different container,
In the
putting
garbage,
glass in here,
metal lid,
not
yes.
breaking it. God forbid you throw something in the garbage and it breaks, now you got broken glass.
I think
Good
most
luck.
people will listen.
I think
Good
most people
luck.
will,
People
I
are
mean, I
good.
rinse it out anyway, cause I don't want the odor, but,
But I think,
If it
Yeah,
comes to
me
the
too.
point where the recycling is stacking up in the streets in front of their houses, they're gonna do it, and it's getting close to that.
it is.
oh yeah,
and I think that the people that are recycling,
in front of your house.
there's
Dennis
a
Court.
large percentage of people that are recycling, and they wanna do it properly.
Yep.
So I think this does allow, because a lot of people right now, what's happening is they're recycling, and the stuff is contaminated and not useful, so all of their
Right.
effort that they're putting in is
and I think
is
people always,
not
I think,
working.
There are
right,
a lot
and
of people that are not recycling. And that's evident when you ride around this town on blue garbage can pickup day and the lack of garbage cans that you see out front, people are not recycling.
Well,
So this is not
I
gonna
think for the
change
most
that.
part, I see how you have a different, I think that most people do try to do the right thing when it comes to that. I
do
really
too.
do. And this started way back in the eighties, but I remember recycling, but, and there are some, I mean, different cultures, there's some cultures that just, they throw everything out. And the garbage man takes it, that really
Right.
blows my head, you know. I sit there and got my leaves in one spot, and got my glass in one spot, and the guy across the street has everything from whatever, and they just throw it all in the same truck. I was like, what the hell did I sort it for?
Just keep doing it. Well, obviously, the bottom line here is we need more education on this, and
Yes.
we need to come up with some ideas on it and revisit this.
Right, so
Well,
if
it's just
everybody could just take a
re-educating.
look at this, because the county is looking to do a uniform sticker for all of Suffolk County to educate as far as what is
I gotta think
recyclable,
about
what
this.
isn't. And then if there's something on here like, you know, right away, the glass bottles or drawers in your recycle bin, you know, it says check with your local municipality for drop-off location. So, you know, our Carter is gonna still pick up glass
So far,
for now.
So we would have to put
What
that
do
on
you
our
guys,
magnet.
what do you
Yeah.
guys think?
so far.
Thinking that we're in crisis situation. and-
Yeah.
Are they gonna have
Really
different
need to do
pickup days though?
something.
Because, I mean, I'm reading this and it says metal and plastic.
We are.
So if you have the glass jar with the metal lid, so I'm gonna have a container for the metal lid, a container for the glass jar. Now, I put those all out on recyclable day, and just what Jim just said, they're picking it up and dumping it in the
No,
garbage
that's
truck.
what they're saying, these other places are not taking glass as recyclable, they're saying just throw it out in the regular
Right.
trash.
Yep.
So, it'll just, it's basically paper and then other, for the recyclable.
Just wanna hear
So that's
from
the
Drew.
difference.
Drew is
That's
saying-
kind of what they're
Drew's saying
doing
we're
at
in a
this point.
crisis situation.
We
I
are.
mean,
You elaborate a little bit?
it's kinda what Jody was saying right now, Southold was piling up recyclables inside their barns for, I think, 2 months. Until till they finally got a new program, and now they're with Trinity in Babylon, I think.
Yes.
Brookhaven is piling up, recyclables, just for the very reason that China wants, what, 5%?
Yep.
Contamination, and some of
Yeah,
ours.
they don't want it, yeah.
Some of ours are up to 30.
Yeah, they're not
But our
taking,
Carter is still gonna be taking our recyclables to Iceland,
won't
so
take
nothing is
US
changing as far as our recyclables, but as far as our solid waste, our household waste, you know, that is a problem.
China got the green sword out?
Well, you know, we
Yes, the
produce
green
a lot of
sword.
trash, and we have to be able to take it somewhere and to have it disposed of, and as we have more and more, and, you know, when the market fluctuates, like it's fluctuating now, it's gonna take a toll.
Yeah, in a couple years, we might be good, I mean, the recyclables might have value to them again, but we have to create new markets.
And the new truck driving laws are killing us too.
Yeah, the E-log, because the E-log, you know, and what a lot of the trucking companies, I've spoken to Winter Brothers, I've
Put a
spoken
garbage train
to,
out there and, you know.
Maggio, Lomangino, I've spoken to Pominock, I've spoken to all these Carters
better
and, or recyclable facilities, and they're saying that they have to take the garbage out of New York State, and then they have to take it out on a flatbed, and then they can't bring anything back in. So, there's some state regulations that the county task force is gonna be working on to work with New York State to try and get through this crisis, but it is a crisis. So,
But
yeah,
there's so many, well, all right,
I mean,
realize.
Southold and
not gonna
Southampton,
solve
they
it
don't
today.
even,
We're not gonna solve it at this table, I just wanna make sure that the people have an opportunity to try to do what they can so that the US doesn't suffer with their contaminants and their recyclables. But there's so much energy out there, garbage to energy programs, there's so much out there that can be explored on at least a county level.
I think that's the issue, when a crisis arises like this, you realize that you can't keep doing business the same way you're doing business, but
Right.
all of those things take time, so
Yeah.
this is obviously, in the short term, we have to figure out how we can manage this.
And by the way, we have a lot of people that are sending in letters to be on the environmental committee.
Yes,
I saw two.
in fact, you got, I just
Barbara
gave you one
Bless
for
was
the young
one
kid,
of it, I
and
know
he's
him.
working
Great.
Brookhaven as an engineer in
A lot of young
landfill.
kids.
Yeah,
How many
about
people are
5 or
gonna
6.
be on the
I didn't
committee?
get any emails
People
about
that
it.
are in the, business.
Yeah, there's
I was
a lot
very
of good
glad to see
resumes
that.
there.
That's a lot.
All right, so we can, any other questions, can we move on to resolutions?
Yeah, so if you could just all take a look at this and
Yes.
see if there's something
Yeah, I
that,
read it.
you
It's
know,
good.
Gonna
we're
be a
either
big
gonna
mission
sign
to
on
en-
to it,
to
or we're
educate.
not.
I don't like mine's black and white, you have a nice color green one, I don't like that, but that's all right.
Because you can see on the bottom, it has every town seal, so they wanna do a uniform sticker that
Joe
goes out
wants a
to every town.
copy.
I like to be a team
I
player.
had looked at it, I'm good with it, the only issue I have is if you could address how they're gonna do the glass,
Yeah,
that's it.
cause it does say, you know, do not put, and then it says, check with your local municipality for drop-off locations, or it should just say,
Or maybe
check
they
with
could
your
put-
municipality
Or maybe they
for.
put except for, and then list the towns that take glass.
I can't get on my computer, so I'll just have to listen as you read.
Okay,
Just hang on
thank
one-
you
give me
very
one
much,
second.
and no other questions for June Ernesto?
No,
No,
I,
okay. Thank you very much.
Talking about the environmental.
the nice intern kind of let you be able to go into,
You might want us to work on
Okay.
topics that you think we'll meet in about a month. We'll start.
Alright. Okay, very good, thank you.
About the Simmons property.
And the rec trail is coming along. The rec trail is, they're paving on Monday, so the rec trail will be complete,
Oh.
hopefully by the end of
freezing
next
weather,
week.
how can they pave in freezing weather?
It's not gonna be freezing. They can't pave in freezing
You want it
weather.
or you don't want it?
We got a heat wave coming for the weekend.
Yeah, right.
52 degrees on
Yeah.
Saturday.
Rain,
Alright, are we ready to move to resolutions?
as long as you read them, cause I don't have.
Yep, authorize appointment of third-party administrative processing and payment of the general liability claims and workers' compensation claims and related medical claims for 2019.
Tonight,
Oh geez, come on.
We feel so wanted.
I'm just,
Yeah, Bill,
And
you're
this
not
is-
on my,
and this
you're not
is
on
real
my
boring
calendar.
stuff, so
You're
it's
not
not
on my
gonna-
calendar.
My diabetes is
Resolution
kicking
number
in.
2 is extends contract with Arthur J. Gallagher and Co-Risk Management Services for the implementation of the insurance program for 2019. Oh, these are all new edits.
I'm not gonna go through the thick packet of their proposal, cause I have a summary, so I'll just speak real quickly on it.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so every year, we have an, insurance package, we usually review it now for next year, we have to, procure insurance by the first of the year, cause our current policy expires on December 31st. So, Arthur Gallagher, won the last RFP for this, they're a broker, they go out and they shop insurance companies for the package that we want. And they come back to us and we negotiate back and forth what's a better package. So, we have basically two types of insurance, general liability and workers' comp, and within each type we have a TPA. Little change from last year, as you can see in that, yellow highlighted area, in the summer, we're saving about $35,000 from last year. We made a change in order to do that, and part of it is, I guess, because of our workers' comp claims and the market. So, you see, we save money in workers' comp, but spending a little bit more, which is probably the cost of living in the general liability package. Okay, we had a policy last year, an umbrella policy that covered both workers' comp and general liability, along with standalone general liability package. And then we had an excess workers' comp package. The bottom line is, last year for our workers' comp, we had an SIR or a deductible of $400,000, and then we were covered to $800,000, and then we had a gap from $800,000 to $1.2 million. So, we don't often go over the $800,000, but we had a gap nonetheless. The new package that we got is just a liability package, and we have a separate workers' comp that covers everything. We're covered up to, well, we're self-insured up to $400,000 is on us, and then from $400,000 to $1 million is all covered. So we saved $200,000 gap, we closed
Yeah,
the
right.
$200,000 gap is what I should say.
very good.
And in doing that, we saved $60,000 in workers' comp. So the increase in general liability, which is probably a little more than a normal increase, maybe a 3% increase, has been more than offset by the decrease. The only caveat here is this is all of our packages, all of our insurance, except for we have one property package that renews April 1st. We don't expect that to go up more than 2 or 3%, and it's about $126,000 package that we can't even get estimates for until we get closer, because they have to go through a whole cycle to see what the prices would be come April or come March.
Okay.
Okay.
Good explanation there, Bill, thank you.
Tried to keep it short.
And this
Good
is,
work.
we have the RFP was put out for two,
I think this is the
two
third year.
extensions, so this
Yeah.
would be the last year of the extensions on
I have
this
to go
one?
back and check if this one next year's the last year.
But the original contract was just for 3,
It was for 3 and I
Okay.
think 1 and 1, so,
okay.
okay.
Core 360 is the company.
Yeah, it's Gallagher's new promotion of what they call it. There's actually an explanation for each one of those dots, it's a part of the insurance package, from pricing to everything else, so. So
Yes.
that's both resolution 1 and 2, one of them
Right,
is,
and two.
is for Arthur Gallagher, so they
Two is-
recommend these policy, and the other one is for both TPAs.
Okay,
One for workers' comp and one for general liability.
Okay,
got it. Thank you, Bill.
Bye.
Thanks, Bill.
thanks.
Thank you.
Number 3, offer support to County of Suffolk for acquisition of Suffolk County tax map number 600-119-2, lots 1.0,
So citizen property?
56, 57, and 58, and authorizes partnership between the town and county such that the town will improve and maintain property as a hamlet park.
You know, I discussed, when we talked about this at work session, that I was in favor of this with the preservation of the land. But the more I've looked into this,
Did you walk up there? Did you go up there?
I would not, cause I didn't have proper attire to protect me from some of the stuff that's there. I am very familiar with the property though. I'm not sure that I think this is a good idea. It was brought up, Jody had mentioned that the land is pretty much sterile. It's really not, there's no other use for it. I spoke with our building and planning department and to find out concerns about whether this property really could be developed into something, and the chances are so slim that I'm not sure I wanna put out the fact that we would take this on as a park and eventually have to, at some point in time, dump over $1 million into it. So I'm not feeling it for this, offering the support for the county for this acquisition.
I'll just to let you know that we have received a lot of letters of support on this. We've received from the Eastern Long Island Audubon Society, we have received from the Pine Barrens, we've received from the Peconic Estuary. Were there other letters of support that were given? Those are the 3 I know. Right, those are the 3
Yeah, I
that
don't
know
doubt that,
at
and
this
I
time.
agree that that's a good idea, but I think this is gonna happen naturally without
Right.
anybody having to take it over and put money into it.
I don't know if all those agencies are aware of the hurdles that are involved in developing this piece of property. For example, that it's in the wild scenic recreational rivers, as Peconic Estuary or Peconic River is a scenic river, and anything within 250 feet to a half a mile of the shoreline is in jurisdiction of the Peconic Estuary program. The lots have all merged together, so if he were to subdivide it and try and build a house, he could only get a 2-lot subdivision in according with the wild scenic recreational rivers. Our riverfront corridor zoning, which was adopted in 2004, says that 50% of the land would have to be dedicated to the town, and that whoever was developing the property would have to build a park for us, essentially with walking trails. And it also says that they would have to remove all the invasive species and replace it with native species. And it goes on to say that the
Now, which zone is this in? What- where did-
riverfront corridor.
Are you talking about the,
And I pulled the tax bills that we're currently receiving $15,000 a year in taxes on this property, which would go away if the county were to buy it.
are they,
There
are
are,
they,
if I can finish,
no, I'm just asking, are they in 4 separate parcels,
but they're
tax
all in the
parcels?
same name, so they've merged together.
So it's one tax bill they receive?
They receive 4 tax bills, all in the same name, so it's merged. So the notice of violation, that there are notices of violation on the property, one, that a chapter 54 proceeding was to take place, and the other for the blighted property code. And when they got the notice of violation for the chapter 54, they took down the barn and left all the rubble there. So that it's no longer an unsafe structure, but now you just have a pile of rubble on the property. So I say we proceed with the notice of violation in the chapter 54, we have them remove the material that's just sitting there. There's another thing, in the BOA study, it says that the development of this property would require that the contaminated soils from the duck farm would have to be removed before they could develop it. So there are so many hurdles on this piece of property, and in my opinion, just like, you know, all of those agencies that you just named that are in support, they wouldn't wanna see the dredging of the Peconic River or of downtown, the Peconic River, because of
Well, it wouldn't
opening
be
up
dredged- it
all of
wouldn't be
those
dredged as a park.
contaminants.
It wouldn't be dredged to the park, it would be dredged if it got developed, and that's what this would prevent.
No, because you would be stirring up the soils in order to put in a 2-foot elevated walkway and 2 platforms. It would be disturbed, and you would be bringing in equipment in there to put that in, and a bathroom. So, in my opinion, there's much more valuable properties that I would like the county to consider. One of them being in downtown, right across from the Henry Perkins.
Well, that's the one I had suggested to you originally, when I spoke to you originally about preserving property, I had told you that the county owned the one piece of property next to it, and that other property next to it would be an ideal property for the Suffolk County to buy.
Yeah.
I did reach out to the county at that point, that was back in January or February, and there's been no movement on on that piece of property, because the owner was not interested in selling it
Well, it's got a
to the
big for
county
sale
at that-
sign on it.
But when I spoke to the county about it and asked them to take a look at that one, they were
Can I
not
see a
interested.
copy of that letter that you sent
No, I
them,
called
because
out Krupski about it, I mean, Jody, you and I spoke about it, because
We spoke
it was
about it.
on the tax map, that it had a lien on it, and that we were trying to see, because it was a commercial piece of property, whether it had to be as a lien for 3 years or 1 year before the county could go in and try and obtain that land for us, so that we could have the beginning of a park in the beginning of downtown. I'm very familiar with that, and I'm the one who brought it up to you,
Actually, it
so.
was Memorial Day parade when we were marching that you said, oh,
Well, no, we
that
had
would be a
spoken
good
before,
piece for the
we
county.
had spoken before that.
Anyway, I don't know.
Okay, Tuesday at planning work session, we had a, gentleman come in that's looking for the property that is immediately to the west of that. That was a property that we thought was going into foreclosure or arrears with a tax lien.
Where the building is there?
No, between, no, between Main Street Stereo used to be, if that rings a bell with you.
Oh, but
You have the used car place,
Yeah,
then you have the county piece of property, then you have a piece of property with a long building
Yes.
on it. That's the property I'm talking about.
That's the one exactly I'm talking about.
Okay, that is privately owned, it did get in arrears with taxes, but it's been brought current, and it is currently up for sale.
It is.
And the gentleman came to the planning work session and is trying to get ideas about possibly purchasing that property and have it developed into a restaurant.
Oh, my.
That's just to add a
So why
little.
don't you, I mean, at that point, then
Right.
why don't, you know, if you want, I'll call the legislator again and see if they can make an offer to him,
I
and
would,
to
I
see if
would
he would
love
sell
to
it.
see that,
Well,
because I think that
that's
would be
not a
ideal, I
problem.
would much rather see it as a park there, right on the river.
I've asked them
where
about
we
that
would-
property
right.
already, and from
Well,
what
it's
my
available and
my
it's for sale.
understanding is that they weren't interested, but
Well,
that
I
may have
appeared
changed.
before the county legislature last Tuesday, and I expressed my concerns
I know.
about this property. And I did give them an aerial photo of the property that you're talking about, and asked them if they would be interested in buying that piece. So, and I've gotten several calls from several of the legislators that are interested in
Which
that other
ones?
piece of property.
Which legislators thought it was a bad idea for us to purchase this?
I'm not saying that anybody, I'm saying that a lot of legislators have called me and asked me about my presentation and for follow-up information, which I have emailed to them.
Well, I'd like to have legislator Krupski come and talk to us about this.
That'd be great.
I
wish we
feel
would've
as
done it in March when
though,
we started.
and I, you know, I understand the concerns about this piece of property, but I would think, you know, we wanna acquire more land along the West Main Street along the river whenever possible, and, it seems as though a lot of that property would have similar issues, and, you know, I'm really hoping that deep down this has nothing to do with ill feeling towards, Larry Sims, that
No,
it's about the
Oh, well,
property.
yeah.
But the
I'll give you
property, the
Yeah,
property
Why would that even
downtown,
be brought up?
I'll give you
the
that.
property that
That would be my
Tim,
reason for voting no on it.
the
But
property that
that's
not mine.
Tim is talking about is a different zoning than the riverfront corridor.
Absolutely, it's completely different,
it
it's not
is.
apples to apples,
It
people,
is.
it's.
That's not in the Wild Scenic that's not in the WSR?
That's in the zoning that we had changed, and it's also connected
Community
to
rivers.
sewers, yes.
But it's also in WSR, right?
Absolutely, but it's less strenuous with the community rivers than what it was, but I can tell you this.
I mean, if you guys don't wanna preserve this piece of property, that is certainly your prerogative. If the county says that they wanna preserve open space in the town of Riverhead, I say,
And then,
Welcome them,
Take $15,000 off
welcome.
the tax rolls on a piece
well,
of property that you can't
welcome
build
them
in.
on the
out to be
piece of,
that much,
and
thank
how
God.
much is the town taxes on that?
It doesn't matter,
About
it's the town and
$1,000,
the school
$1,800.
district.
And we also don't know what the purchase price of this property is, because
What was that?
it does have, you know, we don't know what the appraised value of this property is, because as you were saying, there are conditions on the property, so I imagine that it will not appraise, very high to be purchased to save this acreage right on the Peconic River. So I think to not even have it appraised, it may be at a price that's incredibly reasonable to save one of our natural resources here, right on a national estuary, and protect it. I just think it is very, very, very short-sighted to turn this down.
And I think it's special favors for special friends.
And I think,
And
well,
this is
No,
just what
that's-
Jim was saying, that he didn't think of it this way,
No.
and this has nothing to do with Jody, and I
I have
really
the
resent,
emails.
I
well, if I
resent
could
that,
say
but
something.
let me finish, cause this is a large accusation. First of all, I have not talked to Larry Sims about this property. He actually spoke to Mr. Hubbard before I even came into office. He went to Al Krupski about this property. I had
Who did?
Larry Sims, I guess after talking
Okay,
to
and you've
before
had
I took office.
conversations with Al Krupski about the property.
Al Krupski said, would the town be interested, if we were to purchase this property, would the town be interested in us doing that? And I said,
I'd be curious
absolutely,
to
yes.
see all those emails back and forth, because it was just brought to us last week, and you've been having these discussions with Legislator Krupski since
Because
March.
they've asked for a concept plan of what could go on the property, and I brought a concept plan to the board. The board can also say, I don't want this to be a Hamlet Park, we would just love to have this acquired as open space and not a dollar of town money go into it. I'm open to that too.
I think
That
that
doesn't bother me at all. What I think is at any point, at any time, if we can preserve open space in this town without paying taxpayer money to acquire that property, to say no to that, just is not in the best interest of the taxpayers. And I think, Jody, you're using it because for whatever reason, you have it in your head that there's big conspiracy about this. It is nothing. It's about preserving open space that somebody else is interested in buying. And if the holdup is because you don't wanna spend taxpayer monies to put anything in there, then let's change what it is our concept is to just leaving it as open space without development. I'm fine with that.
absolutely
And that's where I was gonna
I'm
go
fine with
before you,
that. That
before
was
you.
the reason for the concept plan.
Me
Absolutely
too.
fine with that.
Okay,
Me
so then,
too.
Yeah,
so
that
then,
would work, that would work.
we will go back,
That would work.
go back to the, Legislator Krupski and say the board is in agreement with this, but we would like to not preserve it as a park, just to preserve it as open space. I have no problem with that.
And you know what, and what I was gonna say, and I
I would
realize you got,
absolutely
you felt affronted, and actually, I don't blame you. But what I was gonna say was similar to where we wound up going. The property is self-preserved.
Yes.
No doubt about it. If the county wants to go in and purchase that because, for in perpetuity, I have no problem with that.
Me
That's
either.
that's a county issue. I sat on open space for almost 10 years, and we did some parks in Riverhead, we did some preservation in Riverhead. Al came to us a few years ago, when we looked at Danowski's Fish Market across from Maple Tree Deli, and the house is dilapidated next to that. And that was something that was right on the riverfront. And then we did look at the, Etucci's piece, which is that little sliver across from the Henry Perkins, between the.
Which is kind of not
Which-
useful
well,
until
he
you
was-
connect it with everybody
Right.
thing, but
We looked at
county
it, and Open
purchased
Space
that, everyone
looked
was
at
happy.
it, they looked at it and said, well, it's good enough for maybe a canoe launch or something, but it's not wide enough really, it's no wider than this room.
But, Jim, I'll give you a perfect example on that piece of property, if I were sitting here and that piece of property came before me, I would say, okay, let's acquire that, but I would want, something in the back of that property to be able to access the river. If at some point, if 20, 40 years from now, there was an easement that was able to happen all along the Peconic River, you have the ability to do something. But not putting that in there when you acquire the property means forevermore, you will not be
What
able
is
to
the
do it.
timeline on when you have?
Nothing's forevermore.
Yes,
in
it is on
politics.
these properties,
If
when
we
you,
went to
when
the
you
county
purchase.
and said, we wanna build a trail, I don't think the county would tell us, no, we couldn't build a
What is
trail,
the
and I've spoken
timeline?
to legislators about it.
If they purchase the property as open space without it being in, if you purchase it as a passive park, and you say you're gonna put a path in there at one point, and you don't put it in right away, and you put it down, but if you purchase it as open space without giving them a concept, because when they buy it with those conditions in place, and so they'd have to go back and change what they do, but let's have Al Krupski come and explain.
Have you seen this property from the river?
I've seen this property, yes, I've
From the
walked
river, you
down
went
there.
down the river?
Yes, and they've flown over, it's beautiful, and I've also gone to the kayak launch, which is just down the block, another piece of county park, and that was what
That's
the.
state, isn't it? I think so.
No, it's county, and that's what the beauty of that was that it would allow you go from that kayak launch all the way down, which is a very significant area to be able to access the river there.
There's no waterfront access on the concept plan.
There,
Well, you got Forge Road right there,
Yeah.
so I mean.
But anyway,
new launch
you know
right there
what,
with the-
if they wanna support it and we don't have to build a park there, if they wanna buy it, it's just the
Wait a
source of
second.
funding that they're taking the money from. If they're taking the money from the 4% drinking water, fund,
wanna know where
then
the
you have to
county's-
propose a park. If they're taking it from open space, then it has to be left as open space, and
If I could just
Yeah, go
talk a minute.
Sure.
First of all, I'd love to have Al Krupski come here and talk to us about it. Second of all, what is the timeline on when we would, if we put you're saying it's always wise to put the plan in place, what is the timeline on when we must complete it?
well, we would have to get grant money or something else, I
No,
mean,
but
it's
there's no
it's a
stipulation.
six-phase plan.
But it doesn't
No,
say,
it doesn't-
the
it
county
doesn't-
didn't say this must be done within so many years.
No.
There's nothing even about that.
Well, you would want to put the access in there, so you'd want to put either, same as you're doing with
But we
James
don't
Court Park.
have to.
You do
We
not
can
have to
have the
put,
plan in
spend the money,
there,
yes,
and we
correct.
don't actually have to do it.
It's the same as EPCAL with the bike trail. You know, the bike trail was a concept, it took 10 years for it to finally be paved and put in place. So as you can see, you know, it does take time to acquire the funds to do something, it's a vision for something to happen in the future. You know, we were very patient and EPCAL trail came in, I was very happy that when I came into office, we were able to pave it and get that last mile done. So I'm very happy that all of it got done, and it's being used.
My concern is simply this, I'm all for preserving the property. What I'm not all for is assigning us possibly $1.6 million or whatever it was to develop it at some point down the road. And my reasoning for that is very simple, we have a ton of parks in this town now.
Right.
That we can't maintain, that are dilapidated, that need work. So why would we wanna take on more when we can't handle what we already have? I'm not against saving the property, and if we can preserve that property without having to dump any money into it to make it a parkland that would be open to everybody, not just the town residents, I'm not in favor of that. Save the property without any obligation for us to put money into it, I would work with that. We have our own parks we need to put money into, fix, and take care of before we
Well,
venture
open-
on into further endeavors that we can't afford to handle.
Our
That's my
open
opinion.
space, I'm sorry, Tim, it's hard to get a word in here. Our open space committee came and met with me last week, and they wanna be involved. They actually brought up this piece of property, certainly, they're always looking to preserve space in Riverhead, and, I mean, I have to say, for me, it's embarrassing that our town is saying to the county, no, you wanna purchase land for us, and we don't want that. We don't want you to save open space in Riverhead. I think it makes us look like fools.
Well, we're not saying that.
No, we're not saying that though, Catherine,
Good.
nobody has
I'm
said
glad.
that.
Well, it seemed like
That's
that
why
at
what Laura
first,
just
seemed like that
said
at first.
is, that solves the situation for me. Buy the property, preserve it, but with no obligation for the town to dump $1.6 million in
Except there's not any big
it at some
obligation
point
as
in
far
time,
as
any money
timeline
into it,
anyway.
Would
When we
there,
can't handle what we have already.
would there be a will to create just a dirt path and a small parking lot?
No. No.
And then this way, we at least have that ability.
No, because then you're gonna get the people coming in saying, the path is overgrown, get buildings and grounds down there to cut the path, to do this, to do that. The property right now, as it is, first of all, you're taking $15,000 off the tax roll, so that $15,000 is gonna get distributed to everybody else. I say we focus on properties and give the county an updated list of properties that are in threaten of being developed, that we would rather see preserved, and come up with a list and ask the county if they wanna, I thank them all for what they've done with Sharpers Hill and all the preservation efforts that they've had in the town of Riverhead. And you know what? Downtown Jamesport is a perfect place for the town to invest a few dollars for a park, where people are congregating and there's stores around and people can walk around and actually use it. I like the kayak launch that we have on West Main Street, that people can park in a parking lot and launch a boat. I don't see taking a property off the tax rolls for $15,000, I don't see investing money into this piece of property, and the Wild Scenic Recreational Rivers and the riverfront corridor zoning is so prohibitive, along with the BOA study backing it up, that in my opinion, this property will never be developed, and the county, if they didn't buy it, it would fall into their laps anyway for non-payment of taxes, and I would rather see that happen than the county buying it, and wasting my county tax dollars buying a piece of property that you can't build.
John,
I don't
can we
think
find
I
out
don't think
how much
spending tax dollars
of
for
the
open
15,000
space is a
goes
waste
to
of money,
Riverhead?
but, so we're in agreement to go back to the county and say we would be okay with this if it was as open space.
That's, yes,
first
I would support that.
Before we move on anything, I'd like to have Al Krupski come here and maybe give us a little more information
Alright,
on-
so we'll see
and
what-
I just ask if we could find
Is
out
there a
how much.
timeline on this?
I was-
Is there urgency on this?
I was wondering.
It's not
I'm
going
can I
anywhere.
finish?
No, on this
If,
thing.
we could find out how much of that 15,000 actually goes to Riverhead,
It goes to our school district if it doesn't come directly to the town.
well, that's what I wanna
So you don't
know.
care
I
about the
wanna
school
find out.
district, you only care about whether the money's coming to the town?
Alright, let's move on to the next resolution, I think we should have gotten through this. Okay, next one is adopts a local law to amend the chapter 255 entitled Parades, Assemblies, Special Events of the Riverhead Town Code.
What?
That's 4, right?
Yes.
That's the 255?
Oh, okay.
Next resolution is reappoint a temporary student intern 2 to the Department of Land Management.
Yay! Who's that?
I think that's.
Is that Hubbard? Daniel?
Yeah.
Good.
6 is, amend resolution number 883. This is for, Jim, cause I know you don't have, it's just, appointing a minibus driver, substitute minibus driver. No, not minibus driver, regularly, we're taking
We
that
don't
out of
have
there,
a
cause I
minibus
know, sorry about that.
They're really
The
short.
next one is authorizes the supervisor to execute a license agreement with Broadcast Music, Inc.
Oh, yeah, the BMI, yeah.
Yeah. Next is Popeye's Water Service Installation Water District Capital Project, number 81856. Next is authorizes the supervisor to execute a renewal agreement with, Nextraxone LLC, doing business as Black Box Network Services regarding telephone maintenance, so we're just going to renew with them while we finish up with the,
How long is that for?
it's for till the end of June, but it has a 60-day cancellation clause.
Okay, cause that's about right. That's
Yeah.
gonna take till probably March or May, April, or June.
Classifies action pursuant to secret and requires lead agency status to consider a local law to amend chapter 301 entitled zoning and land development of the code of the town of Riverhead Commercial and Solar Energy Production Systems.
Yay.
Shannon.
That is to prevent the clearing of land for the installation of solar.
Right.
The next one is awards bid, awards bid installation of, variable frequency drive at well number 3A, Riverhead Water District.
And there's a misspell in the,
Awards there.
caption.
Next is authorizes the supervisor's execution of a certification and point of contact information sheet from the Department of Navy loaned aircraft. That's over at, the Glen Memorial. 13 is ratifies authorization for the supervisor to execute an agreement with ADP LLC to provide pre-employment background screening. 14 is authorizes town clerk to publish and post notice to bidders for, census water meters and accessory equipment or reasonable equivalent for use by the Riverhead Water District. 15 is extends bid for electrical motor repair, replacement, including emergency repair for the Riverhead Water District. Should've ordered those progressive glasses, that was authorizes the supervisor to execute an agreement with Arlene Bodel for transcription of meeting minutes.
Oh, I think,
Appoints marriage officer, I believe that would be you,
is
Jim?
that me again?
Yeah, and then, second one is appoints marriage officer.
Does that have to be done every year?
Yes.
19 is awards bids for water service material for use in the Riverhead Water District. 20 is authorizes town clerk to publish and post notice to consider a local law to amend chapter 217 entitled Buildings, Building Construction Improvements and Housing Standards of the Riverhead Town Code, Blighted Property.
Ooh, that's a long one.
What is that for?
This is for commercial,
Yeah, for the point system? Yeah.
this is, the building premises has any and all conditions or defects set forth in the section entitled Dangerous Structure or Premises is added to for, at 75 points.
That was where we were trying to get them properties.
Authorizes town clerk to publish and post public notice to consider a local law to amend chapter 301 entitled Zoning and Land Development of the Riverhead Town Code, Commercial Solar Energy Production Systems. I believe this is the one, the other one was just putting us as lead agency for secret. 22 is authorizes town clerk to publish and post notice to consider a local law to amend chapter 301 entitled Zoning and Land Development of the Riverhead Town Code, Districts and Boundaries. This was just a cleaning up of the language, for the titles of the zones and districts. Extends contract non-pro-tunc for Youngs Avenue landfill post-closure inspections, testing and reporting activities. 24 is issues negative declaration pursuant to secret and grants special permit approval for the special permit application of the Real Life Church of Wading River, expansion 29 Dogwood Drive, Wading River, New York, Suffolk County Tax Map, number 600-72-2-2 and 600-72-2-7 and 600-72-2-8. 25 is authorizes the supervisor to accept declaration of covenants and restrictions to limit and exhaust all remaining rights to construct condominium units approved by special permit of the town board by resolution number 608 dated November 3rd, 1982. I think they were allowed to build 300 units, they've hit a level of, 297, 277, so, that will be completed at that level.
277.
That's 277, yeah. Extends bid contract for removal of household hazardous waste. And next is approves 2019 special event application fee schedule. Next is authorizes the chief of police of the town of Riverhead to execute an application agreement with Wex Bank Inc. This is the, I should've had the chief talk about it when he was here. This is.
He's here.
Oh, okay, do you wanna come up and just explain what the Wex is? If not, I know what it is too. It's just really.
For the outside outlying sectors, right?
Right, so it's just so that the cars do not have to come back into, out to 58, locally to gas up their cars, so just to save some time. Okay, does anybody have any questions about that?
Is Speedway open 24 hours in Wading River?
I believe so, yes.
Is-
Or Valero, one of them was open.
One of them is, I don't think it's Valero, cause they've had burglaries there overnight.
Well, this may be
Speedway's
gas
open.
up there.
Speedway is not,
Is Valero open 24 in Jamesport?
I thought Speedway was only open till 11, at least was when I worked there.
Yeah, and it's impossible to find an open gas station if you're coming down Sound Avenue.
Alright, and John, that was everything?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay.
It's cold,
That's it?
the air
Alright,
turned on
We
about
have
half.
executive session, okay.
Something else we can argue on at
So,
this point in time.
First and second to go into executive session for personnel matters surrounding hiring of an employee, matters regarding the replacement of a retired employee, contractual Riverhead United Methodist Church, the town of Riverhead, matters surrounding changing counsel for litigation, negotiations of a contract, 2019 Channel 22 contract, and litigation town of Riverhead et al. Versus County of Suffolk.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Town of Riverhead versus County of Suffolk, is that what we're talking?